Hello and welcome back to Off Track Podcast with me, Dave Neal. This week, it's the third in our MotoGP Mechanics series. We finally managed to sync diaries with Jonny Eyre, the former Repsol Honda and factory KTM mechanic, to sit down and tell some stories and go back through his fantastic career. It's a real joy to sit and listen to, and I can't wait to bring it to you. During the chat, we mentioned the Off Track Podcast new line of merch that we're bringing to you in association with the brilliant Chris at Riding Graphics. Here's another little example of it. We're absolutely delighted with the way it's come out, and this will be available in the next couple of weeks. It also has a little helmet just on the back with the 2 pink stripes that we keep running as our brand as well for Chrissy and for Keith. Please make sure, if you enjoy what we do, that you like and subscribe to the show. There's also the option for the Patreon page. I can speak. There's also the option for the Patreon page down in the description below. Click more, scroll down, and you'll find it there. But that's enough from me. I'm struggling to get my words out as it is. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it's the brilliant Jonny Eyre. Enjoy. Jonny Eyre, hello. Welcome to Off Track, mate. Finally, we managed to put it together. How are you, mate? Good to see you.
I'm not too bad at all. Yourself?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Good, beautiful sunny day in North Lincolnshire.
Yeah.
We've got so much to talk about. You've had Pup and Matt building the mechanics audience.
Yeah, good friends of mine.
There's a lot of people been waiting for this because when we did Matt and Pup, there's so many people came back and went, what a great way to do it. What a great
just
choice.
A bit of an insight.
Rather than just riders all the time. Riders can't do anything without you guys.
No, it's a bit of both really, isn't it, I suppose?
It's all teamwork, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about your career going back through multiple years at Repsol Honda.
Fair few.
More recently at KTM.
Yeah.
A little bit about where you are now with Honda and what you're doing there. But let's go back to the beginning. How? Where did it all start?
Well, it's just, I think when I was at school, I had a passion for motorcycle racing. My dad did grass track, a bit of speedway, bit of vintage racing. He used to take me to Cadwell on the back of his Velocette. And it was quite funny. I used to fall asleep on the back of it. I was only about 8, and stuff like that. It's just always been a passion of mine, motorcycles. And to get involved with it was like the aim, what I wanted to do when I was at school. So, that was it. Basically, I go to school. Luckily, one of my dad's friends, his nephew used to race 250 British Championship, Rob Freer. And I could go with him at a weekend even when I was at school, like 13-year-old, going to a Super Cup meeting as a bit of a gopher, go for this, go for that, get the tyres fitted and just like that, just to be involved more than anything, clean fairings and stuff like that. And that's what I wanted to do. I thought, well, this is motorcycle racing, But it was easy then because it wasn't your job. It was just a bit of fun, and then later on in life, obviously it changes. But that's where it pretty much started off as just a bit of a interest more than anything. Yeah.
I think a lot of people wonder how you get started in motorcycle racing and mechanics, and everybody's got to start somewhere. I mean, we can't all be Pup and go straight in at factory level.
No, fair. I mean, he was lucky. I think he was lucky. Yeah.
It was, you make your own luck, don't you?
Yeah.
But in the usual way, it would take the mick out of Pup for that because a lot of people do. Well, you've never done anything but factory work. Factory teamwork, not factory work. But it's just making your own luck, meeting the right people, and doing the right thing by the right people.
Absolutely. I mean,
Sam, I get to do this same way.
It's your luck of meeting people and he's interested. We'll give him a shout, and then all of a sudden you're rolling, you're going through it. Do you know what I mean?
When people look at motorcycle racing mechanics, it's always a wonder of how you get in there and how it starts and how lucky you are to do what you do. But you had that insight from a really early age.
Yeah, from an early age. I mean, like I said before, when I was at school, I wanted to go motorcycle racing, and I think it was a careers advisor. Said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go motorcycle racing as a mechanic. And they was like, well, there's this course for car mechanicing or this course for this. And I'm like, well, that's not really motorcycle racing, And luckily, like I say, I left school, and I think within a week I was working at Brindley Motorcycles for Richard Mundy. And Richard had done a deal with, obviously Rob, who was the rider at the time, that I could have Friday off and Saturday off and go work with him and do the British Championship, the Super Cups.
Brilliant.
So that was, I mean, sometimes I was in back of a transit van going down to Thruxton with a caravan on the back, you know what I mean, with a 250 next to me. But that's how it was then, and you could get away with it, you know. But yeah, that's where it pretty much started off.
You did that for 6 years.
British Championship, yeah. It's like when I was still at school, I was just going and helping out and stuff. And then my first actual full-time job was a bit later on, but this was just like a passion thing.
Oh, working it out. If you were born in 1980 and your first job was 1993, like you say, you were 13.
I was still at school. Yeah. But it's a job, but it was more of a weekend helping.
Yeah, of course.
Like that. But still,
Like you say, I was here and there.
I'd get back on a Sunday night from Brands Hatch at about 2:30 in the morning. And my dad had picked me up from Pip's house because that's where his caravan was parked. And I'd nearly be fast asleep, but I'd have to get up next morning and go to school.
It's an incredible journey because I find it fascinating for anybody that works in whether it's BSB Paddock, whether it's Worlds, whether it's MotoGP. We know a lot of the same people, and everybody's journeys are that little bit different.
Yeah. It's just, like I say, I mean, there's people have their own different areas and different friends and different like complete people around them. But it's just, my story's a bit more, I think it's just luckily and normal and just a bit, I've just kind of made my own path and gone that way, really.
The harder the work, the luckier you get.
Yeah, possibly so. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
So we live in such a hotbed area for motorcycle racing, for teams, for riders, for mechanics, for staff. If that's the route you want to go down, we kind of live in the perfect place for it. In Lincolnshire in general.
Yeah, there's a lot of people around it. Yeah,
there's always somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah, well, there's like Mara Brown from Messingham, you know, Rob McKelney. They're all people I know, you know as well as I know, people like that, you know. So there's, Roger Marshall, a lot of good ride. Roger Burnett. I mean, the list could go on.
Even Granty lives in Lincolnshire.
Yeah, Jimmy used to ride trials, didn't he? Probably still does. Yeah.
No, he does. Yeah, 80 years old and still going.
Yeah, fair play.
We were talking about that with Steve Plater a few weeks ago.
There's another one, Steve Plater.
Steve Plater at Woodall Spa. Yeah, and this is it. This is why being from Lincolnshire, if that's the route you want to go down, there's no better part of the country to. But it's like if you live in Buckinghamshire and Northamptonshire, if you want to go F1. You're in that area. It's all down that neck of the woods anyway. And also, now this might put a little bit of pressure on him if he's watching. I got a message from someone last week who's good friends with Mara, who said he's contemplating coming on the show.
He's a good lad, Mara Brown. I've got a lot of time for him.
And I really hope he does.
I've got a lot of time for him.
Because we've had Sorf on. We've had Boz on.
Steve Thorford, Bozzy.
And
great guys.
So all really good that era.
Yeah.
They've got the stories. And that's what we love. We love telling the stories as everybody knows.
Everybody's got one, haven't they? You know what I mean?
100%. And if they haven't, they don't want to tell it.
Or you can't tell it.
Can't tell it. But then after you sort of cut your teeth with Rob, Mara was your next step.
Yeah, it was kind of, I was working with my dad as well. That was another thing. My dad was an electrician. So I was working with him. And that was another reason. When I went to Brian Lee's, I went to Rusty's, and they both finished and what have you.
Rusty's,
Rusty's motorcycles. I was there for about 6 months when they both joined together. I can't remember the guy who bought the company altogether, and it was just it wasn't really right. It was not going to go anywhere, and they were just like taking all the money out of it and stuff. So I decided to go to college and do a bit of electrical work with my dad, because I could still have my weekends racing and stuff like that. And that's what I did for a little bit. And then luckily, I got a phone call from, I think it was Enzo Di Clemente. And he said, would you like to come to a race and just see what it's all about? And I was like, yeah, I'll come have a look and stuff like that. And he said, I was just like a van driver at the time, and at the end of it, I went to City Electrical Factors because my dad couldn't pay me the maximum wage or something, because he was only self-employed at a farm in Lincolnshire. So I decided to do a bit of van driving for CEF, just keep me going. And that's when I got the phone call from Enzo, and I thought, well, perfect. So I went to a race meeting, I can't remember where it was, and they said, would you be interested in going to the Northwest? And I was like, yeah. I said, I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's like working, I think, yeah, God, Northwest. Because obviously Rob previous had injured himself.
Yeah.
And he decided to retire from racing, which fair enough. I think he could have gone a bit further, but that was the end of his time. So yeah, and so it was like, right, Northwest. I thought, great, this is going to be great. I've never been out of the UK really, and I think then he took me to drive the car so they could all have a few drinks. That was the only reason why they probably took me. But anyway, and yeah, I said, yeah, I'll go to the Northwest. So we went off in a little Mercedes Sprinter van and got on the ferry, and it was just like, it was all surreal for me because I'd never done anything like this before. And obviously Mara was a fairly established rider. He was British champion and stuff like that. And Enzo was a good team. They were like supported by Honda and stuff. So it was like, I was really looking forward to it. And I remember getting there and we set the awning up and we had a big awning and we had one CBR 600 in the corner. And I went out the front and there was Joey Dunlop working on an RC45, a 250, a 600 out of the back of a 7.5 ton truck. And I'm thinking, he's on his own. There's nobody helping him. And I thought, blimey, but it was like, that's Joey Dunlop. You know what I mean? And then I think Enzo had spoke to him and said, oh, bring your bikes in the awning, because obviously it's all Honda anyway. It wasn't a big problem. That was the biggest problem we had, because then everybody over the weekend, the tent was just full of people. We couldn't even get out with that 600. It's like, oh my God.
We've only got one bike, excuse me.
Yeah. So Joey come in and it was just like, wow, the amount of people. But it's fantastic. I loved doing the Northwest. I only did it one time. I think Mara finished about 6th or 7th, something like that. But we stayed in this cottage, real beautiful cottage near a river. I can't remember what it's called. And it was weird because you'd get up for the morning, say you'd have a day off or something, and there'd be Ian Duffus walk through the door, and then an Ian Simpson, and it's like then Dave Jeffries, and it's like all these, for me, at that time, they were all like legends, you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm having a cup of tea with Dave Jeffries and stuff like that, which was wow, you know? And then we went I remember I was drive because they was all having drinks while I was driving. Another reason why they took me probably. But anyway, and first met Steve Hislop in a bar. And what a bloke, you know, what a person. And I had a lot of time for Steve after that, obviously. But it's like, that's Steve Hislop. And we had a drink and he's talking to me and I'm just like, I didn't know what to say half the time because it's like such an awe, you know what I mean? He was like the superbike rider, you know? And obviously he knew Mara, he knew all the guys who I was with, but I didn't really know him. And lo and behold, later on, I'll be working for him the year later. So, yeah.
You're allowed to be a fan of the sport still, aren't you? That's the great thing about it. It's appreciating where you are and what you're doing and who you're doing it with. You still got a job to do.
Yeah.
But at some points, and it's quite the same doing this, you sit there and go, fuck, this is cool.
Yeah. You have to pinch yourself sometime and think, I'm quite lucky.
And it is, because you wonder, like, well, I could be doing a normal job. Or it could be working at B&B or somewhere in town.
Yeah.
It could be. Yeah. Is B&B still open?
It could be.
It could be, I don't know. He's up there somewhere. But you sit there and you go, this is just super cool. And when you're talking about legend like Ian Duffus, Simo, DJ, Joey.
Great guys. Legends.
Just phenomenal people. Yeah. And then to bring Hizzy in as well.
Well, when I was
sadly, three of those boys aren't with us anymore.
No, but when I was watching them when I was 13, they were racing the superbikes, BSB, superbikes at then Super Cup. And he was like on the Nortons, Simo on the Nortons. And it's like, Izzy was on the Hondas and then the Ducatis. And it's like, wow. And then the Yamahas, obviously, with the Virgin boys and that. So, yeah, it was just like...
And there you are, taxiing them around Northern Ireland. The North Coast of Northern Ireland.
Yeah, taking them everywhere. And that was like my trial period at the Northwest.
Yeah.
And then I got offered a full-time job after that.
Did you do much road racing after that?
No, never. No. After the Northwest, I did once with Mara.
Yeah.
I've never done any other road racing since.
Just for the opportunity?
Just the opportunity. And also, like I said, if I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't have got the job. So
everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. It was brilliant. Like I say, I met all these people that were just great people, great guys, you know.
What was your best experience at the Northwest?
Probably Portrush or Kelly's nightclub. Seeing Adrian Coates staggering out of there, absolutely shit-faced, and he couldn't even remember his name. And I thought, Jesus Christ, but he wasn't racing, obviously, then, but he couldn't even walk, Adrian Coates, yeah.
I shall tap him on the shoulder about that when we go, because we're going over in a month or so. He still does a bit of the commentary, and a bit of hosting, on the Northwest too, on the feed, on the internet feed.
Yeah. Really nice.
Getting old school then.
Really nice guy. But like I say, he was from the 250 here when I worked with Rob, you see. So that's how we met him. But yeah.
But it's not quite a baptism of fire into racing. That's the bit that I like, because you're going step by step. You're not overreaching in early doors, people are coming to you to say, this is where we want to do. How about, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So was it only the one season with Mara?
One season with Mara. I've got a little story to tell you about Joey. This was the first thing I'll say. And he never understood a word he said, because I couldn't understand a word he said. And he just, because he was on his own, it was practice, and he just said, bump the 250 off. And he said, when I come in, you grab the 250, give me that. And obviously, he I think he was on a 45 or a 600, and just take it back to, so he could practice on 2 bikes. Because he was on his own. I thought, how can this be? Joey Dunlop's on his own, but that's probably just how he wanted it. So yeah, sure enough, I got the 250 up to temperature, then off he went, and then I grabbed, I think it was a 45 or it was a 600, and just put it on the paddock stands back in the tent, and that was it. And that's the only really time I've had anything to do with Joey. That was the only.
Was that 2000?
No, that was with when I was with D&E, so that'll be 1999. Yeah. Quite strange. Like I say, it was just like, Joey Dunlop, I was running a 250 up for him.
From the mechanical side of motorcycles, are they much of a muchness in terms of what you do? There are certain components that I'm going really basic with this because I don't understand the technical side of things. Like, you've got a 250, you're working on the CBR 600, and the differences between them are vast because you've got 2-stroke and 4-stroke. Yeah. But they're still motorcycles and the same moving components at the end of the day, I guess.
I think what you have to remember is it is just a motorcycle. And if all the nuts and bolts are put in the right place and tied up correctly and everything is run normal, it'll be fine. That's how I mean, I tell you who told me that, Alex Briggs, and that's one of Ross's mechanics.
Yeah.
He says, you have to remember it is just a motorcycle. And it is, at the end of the day, no matter how big and wings and all, it's just a motorcycle. And if it's put together right, you shouldn't have any problems with it.
See, that's the interesting side to it. That's the interest, because whether it's a factory KTM, an RC213V, an NSR250,
if it's put together right, you shouldn't generally have a problem with it. That's my opinion anyway.
But there is an element in motorcycle racing. Keep it simple.
They always used to say, keep it simple, stupid, because if you don't, you end up tying yourself in a right load of shit. Yeah. With settings or whatever, you always seem to be chasing. Because winning races, when you was winning races, you change next to nothing. It'll probably be a spring rate, or that's it. Nothing major, because the bike's fast enough and the rider's fast enough.
The rest of it's just cleaning and servicing.
Cleaning, checking everything. So it's not cracked. It changes for mileage or whatever. But for me, like I say, if it's put together right, you shouldn't have a problem with it. That's my opinion, for sure.
You've been doing it long enough.
Keep it simple. Don't do anything silly. Yeah.
We'll ask about this when we've gone through it. A lot of people are interested into how the bikes have changed over the years.
A little bit, yeah. I know a little bit about it, from the 2-strokes to 4-strokes. Yeah,
you've been all the way through, haven't you?
Yeah,
all the way through. The so just one season with Mara, then
one season with Mara in '99.
Yeah,
and then Adrian Marsh at Virgin Yamaha.
Yeah,
obviously Rob McKelney was team manager. He rung me and said, "We want to meet you." And they were based in Scunthorpe. So all right. That's perfect. And then I went to see him. Typical Rob Mack, you'll be paid this much for a year, and then took $2,000 off me because I was unemployed for 10 months. But that's just Rob McKelney for you. But yeah, and that was me basically. I was going to be working at Virgin Yamaha with, lo and behold, Steve Hislop. So he's like, wow, So yeah, then obviously later on, I didn't know, but Mara had signed to ride for Virgin as well.
Yes.
So that was quite nice, because I wasn't going to be working for him, but he was going to be still in the same team. So yeah, it was great. It was sponsored by Virgin Mobile at the time. I think that was a new thing from Richard Branson. Yeah, it was a new thing. So yeah, and I met a few new guys there. Kev Stevenson, a lad called Johnny Fingers. They were real good lads. Obviously Ada, he was there, and Rob McKelney, and Mel, who I used to work with. Me and Mel used to work with Steve, you see.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, Mel Allen, a real nice guy. Yeah, he was so calm, never got stressed about anything.
How important is that on a race?
For me, it's very, if you get out of that zone, that's when stuff starts to go wrong, and then it snowballs. If you can try and keep calm, it's fine. It's fine.
Because there's still a job to do. And I find that's from working in teams and being with riders over the years, you see a bike comes back in a wheelbarrow.
Yeah, we've had that a few times the last couple of years, but anyway, yeah.
Sorry, Brad. But then all of us, everybody's got a job to do, and you see, I quite like the digressing. We've got everything. This brings us back to where we are in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
When the bike comes back and it's in so many different pieces, you see all the crew have a certain part of a bike to it. Is it rehearsed that certain people will work? You see a couple of people working on the front, left and right, a couple of people working on the back, left and right. Somebody's leaning over the front, somebody's leaning over the back.
Because, well, obviously, I worked at KTM. There was basically, I had looked after one bike, and Chetman, Daniel Lee, looked after another bike, and Pup overseed and obviously does, and both of the bikes, you see.
Yeah.
But when, like say, the bike could come in, I mean, Brad crashed twice in, I think, America last year. And Pup just said to me, which bike do you think? And we looked and we just thought, and I said, that one for me, the wings are still on, but and if we'd have gone with the other bike, all the wings were hanging all off. So you've got to have a bit of an instinct, look visually first start and think where we're going to be with it.
Yeah.
You know? And it's the same in Barcelona. Brad crashed. I think he was having a hell of a crashing spate at the time. And Pup just said to me, which one? And I said, that one. And we just all went on that. And it was basically, I think it was during practice, but it was to get into the qualifying. And we had to work flat out, footrest change, blah, blah. And it was just like, you don't even think about it. You just shouting, pass me footrest. And it was all coming, everything. All the guys were working at the same time. And basically, I think we got the bike finished with about 9 minutes to go. And Brad went out and qualified 6th. So it was just like, everybody just did it. It didn't fall off. It was put together right. And he went out. And I mean, he had to have confidence in the bike again because he just crashed.
Absolutely.
And he went out and qualified 6th. So we was like, and everybody was like, pat on the back. Simon Crayford come on, he said, you guys did an amazing job. But it's just, I think once you get in that zone, like Pup will probably say the same, you get in a zone and it's just constant and you know what you're doing. Wing, put the wing on, this has to do that. And if it needs grinding, you don't ask somebody to grind it. You just grab it and you just go out the back and you grind it quick and you put it on. But you never stop doing it, if you know what I mean. You never think, oh, I'll not do that, because then that's when stuff gets lost and left loose or whatever. But yeah.
Do you have a specific area that each person works on? In situations
like that, I used to concentrate on the swinging arm, the back end of the bike, the chain adjusters, swing arm. Pup would check around everything, but generally on the front where the electrics are and stuff like that, and all the ride height adjusters and everything like that. And Checkman the same. We kind of, when we was building a bike, we always did the same kind of thing. But then if I did my bike on my own, I'd do everything. It's kind of, when you're in the heat of the moment, you have that area that you did and the other guys would work around you. But you never barge into each other. It was quite, how could you say it? Rehearsed, but not rehearsed, because
it's like a dance.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
It's incredible.
I would never bang into anybody, or I would never, you know what I mean? It was gelled. You never kind of, oh, sorry, mate, I've banged you up. No, you never did that. And if they needed a tool,
exactly what fascinates,
you just pass the tool through and it'd be there.
Brilliant.
And it's because we're working with good guys and you work with them for a long time, so you know how you are with it. Yeah, that's what I can explain it, yeah.
Because you see it on the TV and it just looks fascinating. Like you say, nobody's elbowing, nobody's like, excuse me, can I just...
If they bring the fuel tank in, nobody has to barge in a bit, just put it on and everybody does it, and it's just like...
Somebody will connect one side, somebody connect the other, and it's just there.
Yeah, it's just what you get used to as well. Yeah.
It's a fascinating side to it, because it isn't just prepping the bike for the weekend.
No.
When the bikes go away on a Sunday night and you're racing again in a couple of weeks' time, do you see the bikes in between, or do you do everything?
No, not in MotoGP. You basically do all your maintenance and everything at the circuit.
So on a Wednesday night.
So Wednesday, what we do is used to go in early. Some of the guys would go in earlier and get the boxes all ready and the truck all ready. And I would actually go in with the carpet crew, we used to call those, because we used to fit all the carpet and everything before all the other guys arrive. Because if you have everybody arrive at the same time, you'll have 15 or 20 people stood doing nothing or potentially getting in the way and telling fuck off out of the way. Do you know what I mean? So we used to, like say, Pup used to organise it. They'd go in and sort the boxes out. We'd come in at 45 minutes to an hour later, start putting the carpet down. And by the time we'd got the carpet finished, the other guys was coming and you start building the box. And then generally a setup would be 3 hours from completely nothing to fully working airlines, electrics, bikes on the benches, everything. About 3 hours. Yeah, with the internet sorted and all that lot.
How many people?
KTM, I think last year, I think there was about 55 people.
All right. So yeah, that'll.
Yeah, 50 in the whole team, because
Yes.
obviously you had your PR people and all that, but everybody came in, and normally set up about 3 hours. Yeah.
See, that's a fascinating insight.
So then you obviously bikes are on your benches, then you go for lunch.
Yeah.
Come back, and then you could start stripping your bikes.
And then you work until it's done.
Yeah, well, you work that night. You probably won't be too late, because Pup would know what we're changing, or what was the mileage parts or whatever, whether it's an engine change or a chassis or whatever. And you kind of know, we just basically take both bikes apart. Obviously, one had done the race, one was just a spare bike, possibly. So that one wouldn't have much work to do on it. But the other one would be a full strip check and all that lot. But then again, you might be changing swing arm or whatever. But at least you'd know what you had to do. The bikes would all be clean. All the nuts and bolts would be clean. And then basically your next day, your Thursday, is build everything back up. Because it gives them time to think overnight if they want to change something as well.
Yeah, because I suppose, especially from a KTM and a development potential, there's a regular, or that was when in your time, a regular supply of new parts, and
it was coming through faster than you could fit it.
Constant development side.
3D printed parts and stuff. Basically straight from the manufacturer.
Yeah.
Not even been fitted to a bike. And this is why we'll speak to later about it. This is where the Japanese manufacturer have struggled a little bit because of how they did things in the past to other things in the future. And like, we'd get stuff at KTM and it had never been on a motorcycle before, and it was like, right, fit that.
Did it fit?
Sometimes, well, you made it fit.
Yeah,
you made it fit, or you got what it needed to be done.
But it was there. That was the important.
That was the thing. It was there, and that's why the Japanese have struggled, because they just can't seem to do it as fast.
No, they have that different way of working, don't they? It's like it's the Kai's at one step at a time.
Yeah, they do it, and then it has to fit to this bike, and then it has to be all sorted, and then there's all pictures of it. Ours would be put it on.
Which is why Ducati and KTM have done what they've done.
They've just gone a little bit, like, say, that's where they've caught the Japanese on the back foot, really.
Yeah. Welcome to the modern world.
Yeah.
It's not 1964 anymore.
Not. And like, you have a load of Japanese sucking the teeth out, and where KTM or even European manufacturers would just say, get it fitted and get it running.
Yeah.
And if it breaks, doesn't matter, but it's been there and it's on the track, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
It's a fascinating side to it, because it's not just about the rider, the team side of it. And this is what was speaking to Pup and to Matt about that side of things. There's a lot of questions came out from people after that to go, we'd like to know about this side more, and we'd like to know what does happen in the garage. What does the mechanic do? So from your last role at KTM, what did you do? What did a race weekend look like for you? What did you do to a KTM over a week?
Pretty much everything. It's difficult to say, because obviously the bikes are fully adjustable.
Yeah.
You can be pivot, forward, back, up, down. Same head pipe, forward, back. You can, and everything. They're fully adjustable. But your weekend, once, like I've said before, once you got rolling, because I mean, you'd only probably in a session, it's 45 minutes at MotoGP. Yeah. You'd probably only do 3 runs. In 3, you ain't got a lot of time. So you can't really split we'd generally have one bike the same, and then one bike probably a little bit different to the week before.
Yeah.
Just to try it. And if it won't go, at least you've still got a good base setting, And then once your weekend starts, then you've got to think about, like Pup used to think about the chain mileages, because obviously the warm-up now in MotoGP is only 10 minutes. So you've got to stretch your chains before the warm-up, because you stretch your chain in a warm-up. You used to do it in a warm-up. Put a new chain on for the warm-up, you'd have 20 minutes. So the chain would be nice and stretched for the race.
Yeah.
But now you're having a sprint race, you need a chain, obviously, that's under mileage. And then for the big race, you only have a 10-minute warm-up. So your chain for the big race needs to be run in the first day. So it's stretched and everything for the big race. Things evolved and changed because of that. Because the shortens the warm up and things like that. So your weekends obviously change, but you can in your way. You was like, we'd start with 2 new chains, we'd stretch them both, and the one with the lower mileage you'd take off, and then you put another new one on, because you might even change the swing arm length and put half link in or something like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you had to have all these options available. That's why Pup was organising. He used to say, right, we need this, and we'd have loads of chains with 120 link or whatever, 128 link or 129 or whatever, with half links in that are mileaged, because if you went to another swing arm length, you need the right chain for the race, that's run in. It's so many. I mean, fair play to Pup. There's so much for him to organise as well as working on the bike. He did a great job, and he was really, really good to work with. Yeah,
you find it a lot. I've seen it within the teams at OMG, and there's always a list of parts and mileage.
Yeah, everything's
mileage. Got mileage.
Yeah,
but it changes out. It's got everything on the bike within reason has got a shelf life.
Yeah, because generally they know if it goes over that mileage, it will possibly fail. And if it fails, that could cost you a race victory at the time. So, yeah, you've just got to keep on top of the things. And that's what Pup would do. He'd organise for his computer the mileage chart. All right, we're changing this, boys. Okay. And you just get on and do it. It's just,
yeah, that's what you're there for.
That's what you're there for.
This is what
you are a bit of a parts fitter, but you've got to probably make the parts fit at time and stuff like that. But, yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
What's the most surprising part you've ever fitted?
It was probably the first KTM chassis that was different to all the others, and it had never been done before. And we're out the back with an angle grinder cutting it, and it was like, are we really doing this? But we did it, and fuck me, yeah, it was massive. It was a big step. But at the time, you think, fucking, we was grinding and cutting, and just like, what are we doing?
Should we be doing this?
Should we be doing this? But that's what they wanted to. It was like after a race, I think it was in Mazzano. It was after the race, is right, we're going to cut that spar out. And it's like, all right, okay, fair enough, if you want us to do that. But it had never been done before. So to put it on an engine, we had to lift the engine. And I'm not used to that. I like a jack or whatever. So, yeah. But we had to lift the engine, and it was like, really, what are we doing here? But probably that was the most strangest thing to do. And then watch it go around the track the next day. But it was better. So yeah, it must have been right.
See, it's fascinating.
You've been out the back of the trucks with an angle grinder and all those spikes.
It's factory frame.
It's like, yeah, and half the other manufacturers.
Leaning out their garage. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, half the time we had to cover it up because obviously, you couldn't really, you had to try and keep it a bit secret, but our angle grinder was always working in the steel frame days anyway, that is.
Yeah. Well, because then it moved on to carbon. Yeah. And then we'll talk about the swap over from Honda to KTM later on.
Yeah.
But tell me about that season with Hizzy, because what a great rider to work with.
Brilliant guy. You know, just like for me again, he used to ring me up. Because I used to sort his helmets. I've got one there.
I'm going to say, well, the few eagle-eyed amongst you can maybe see this.
That was his helmet.
Yeah. For those that are listening on audio, behind us is a shelf, a beautiful wooden shelf with helmets from for Johnny's own. There's Hizzy, Leon. Yeah. There's Danny Pedrosa, and there's a Brad Binder one as well. So we have to remember the audio listeners.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's that one.
Yeah. But I think there was, because he went to the fluorescent yellow.
Yes.
So I think there's only 2 ever of that one, because he went to fluorescent yellow.
The peach, pink and blue with the flying haggis on the top.
Exactly. And then he went to where the pink is, he went fluorescent yellow.
Yes.
And that was the one that you could buy, but that's the one that he had painted, and he only had 2 of them done, and he gave me one of them. So, yeah.
It's beautiful.
Regarding Izzy, just
on the R7,
yeah, on the R7 Superbike, yeah. Just like for me, it was like to work with him was great. You know, he's so fast and so perfect. You know, so his riding style and everything. And I mean, to a point, he used to get his boots and his gloves, and he used to paint them himself. You know, I remember him at Silverstone was doing something, and he brought these black pair of gloves, and he got some plastic paint, and he was painting all the knuckles and everything red, just to jazz them up. And I thought, fantastic, you're doing it. And even his Alpine Star boots, he used to paint them a little bit just to make them different. But yeah, one time he had a set of boots, and I think he'd used them in the wet. And he said, "Have you got a heat gun, Johnny?" I said, "Yeah, I've got a heat gun, yeah." He started to use a heat gun, and he left it running to dry him out. Well, it fucking shrunk his boots that small. He just fucking come running in, and he put them in a bucket of water and just put his boots straight back in a bucket of water. So it went back to its normal size. I says, "Well, you'll not need the heat gun anymore, will you now?"
Do you want me to switch that off for you?
Oh, man. So obviously he'd shrunk them, and then he'd gone, "Shit, can't fit them on my feet." And put them in a bucket of water again just so they go back to the normal size. But yeah, to work with Steve was fantastic. He used to ring me up and he said, just make sure I've got them boots in, them leathers in, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, because I used to pack the truck for him, all his team gear and stuff. And then I was working with me and Mel Allen, who's a real good guy. Like I said before, he's so relaxed and so cool. He was brilliant, Mel. And I remember once in Cartagena, I was a young one of the team, let's say. And Hizzy came in and so I was taking the rear shock out. Okay, so we took the belly pan off and Mel had put the belly pan out the front of the garage.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So changed the shock, went back out, and I was doing the pit board, and Ada Marsh says, "Whose belly pan's that?" And I was like, he says, "Get him in." I'm like, fucking hell, yeah. And fair play to Mel, he just said to Ada, he said, "It wasn't Johnny's mistake." He says, "I put it outside." But Ada was no problem with that. He was absolutely fine with that. If it had been my mistake, I'd have got it shredded, like, basically. But Mel had just said, "No, that was my mistake. I put it outside." Yeah.
So it was like Cartagena with no belly pan.
Yeah. But Izzy couldn't. The bike was fine.
He'd ride anything.
He'd ride out, anyway.
Did you do the World Superbike wildcards with him?
Yeah, when he broke his neck. Yeah, at Brands, I was working for him then. And I remember pushing the bike back and we knew he wasn't very well. But he wasn't any threat of being paralysed. But, it was a nasty crash at turn one. I think there was Hager. There was Edwards involved.
Yeah.
And you see pictures and his head's just like, really, and I remember pushing the bike back because obviously he used to push it, but we was in a tent at the bottom of the hill. We weren't in garages, and I was pushing his bike back. I think it was in a tent, I'm sure it was.
So you're in the bottom paddock?
I think I was pushing his bike back.
Yeah.
Maybe we were loading up or something, but anyway, I was pushing the bike back, and John McGuinness was stood there. He says, "Are you all right?" I said, "I don't know at the minute. We don't really know any information." And later we found out that he broke his neck, but he was okay.
Yeah.
So he's like, thank God for that, because with a broken neck, you don't know where you are with it, And I remember him telling me later he had an operation, but they had to go in through his mouth. And he said he had all stitches. And he said he had this weird feeling of just like, ooh. And it's when the stitches had just finished, when they dissolved, and he's like, ooh, he had two of them, one each side. But yeah, it was quite strange. But to work for Steve, fantastic blessing, yeah.
They were good times, weren't they?
Really deep.
It's like work for Rob as well, the whole setup.
Yeah. Rob was a character. I used to go trials riding with him, and he took me.
We don't talk about trials riding.
No, we'll keep that one quiet for now. But Rob was a real good trials rider, He's really, really good.
Really fucking hard.
We went to Harwood Dale once, and he used to ride a TYZ Yamaha because he probably got them free. And it was a real frosty, freezing day. I'll never forget it. Really cold it was. And there was one section, it was only a stupid little section, like riding up this, it was like ice. And everybody was five in it. Even the real top riders were five in it. And I'm thinking, and Rob just turned his tick over up and just set off, and the bike just ticked over and he went straight like that. And he went through the section clean and nobody clean. I was like, fuck me, you know what I mean? It's like he knew what he was going to do, and then he got on the other side and just turned his tick over back down, and we're all like, but the scariest thing was coming back in the van. I have never been so scared in my life. Well, I have a few times with Rob, but he was in an A&C van, because obviously he's run A&C at the other side of Virgin Yamaha, and we was overtaking on blind cresses and stuff like that, and me and Jez, who I work with Rob Freer, Jez Newbury, real good friend of mine, basically, we was absolutely screaming, but Rob was just laughing his head off because he knew what he was doing. He was fully in control, but we was just like, every corner.
But yeah, so getting a van with Rob Martin.
Yeah, well, I got on back of an XJR 1300 going to Cadwell. That's another story.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, they were doing a test at Cadwell. I think they used to do them a bit. Rob wanted to ride the bikes, the sevens and stuff. I don't think Hizzy was riding. Mara was riding. And there was no way for me to get up there. So Rob says, "I'll take you on back of the XJR 1300. And I thought, but it's my only way to get to Cadwell to go to work, really. Well, we set off from Scunthorpe and on Case to Top. I have never been so scared in all my life. All the way to Cadwell, I was white as a sheet. I was meant to work. I was absolutely shaking like a shitting dog when I got there. So it was kind of like, yeah. And he said to me, "Are you coming to the back on the way?" And I says, "Am I fucked?" And luckily, I think his dad, Jerry, bless him, he's passed away, but Jerry had drove an A&C van up. I says, "I'll take the van up. I'll take the van back home, no problem." So Jerry, his dad, got on the back of him and went home, and I thought, I am not getting on a bike with him ever again in my life. Yeah. Jesus Christ, never been so scared.
Honestly.
But that's Rob McElney for you.
But yeah, exactly that. He's no fear, has he? even now, he's not getting any younger, but he's not getting any
Absolutely.
wiser.
I owe a lot to Rob because he kind of gave me my first. Yeah, I was with Enzo full time, but Rob was like the first proper racing superbike team that I worked for.
Factory as well, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Well, the bike is factory supported.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to get stuff come through that was very similar to what Arga had.
So that's kind of what you aspire to, isn't it? If you go into any at national level,
Yeah.
you want to be in a factory
Yeah,
supported
yeah,
team, and then
yeah.
where you go from there is what you can make of it.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to do.
No,
Everybody
exactly.
wants to travel in, but
Yeah.
that's kind of what kicked you off into the bigger times.
Yeah, I wanted to go Grand Prix racing, obviously, and it's so difficult. I remember Ada Marsh. He said because obviously he'd worked for Darren Barton on the 125s and stuff. Another good name, and he said it's more difficult to get into Grand Prix than it is to get into the Arsenal first team. And I was like, he said because everything's kind of if there's a job available, the guy who's there they've already got people to fill it in. And I was like, I remember giving all my CVs to all the race teams and all that lot. And later I found out that Roger at HRC just to put them straight in the bin. But it's just, because that's how it was. You never got that opportunity. So I remember Mick Shanley. I owe a lot to Mick because he got me in Grand Prix, basically. And he said, would you come and work for Shell Advance Honda? And I was like, yeah. I said, definitely. You'll be paid this much money and you'll live at just north of Barcelona on the Costa Brava, which was fantastic, but we'll talk about it in a little while. And you'll be working for Leon Haslam. And I was like, yeah, definitely, And unbeknown to Mick, I was already in contact with a company in Holland called DC Jeans, and they run Anthony West later on.
Yeah.
And I had to ring them up and say, I'm not coming. And they were a bit, but I had to go with the better option of working with Mick and working with Leon than in Holland, where I didn't really know anybody. So it was a bit of I'm really sorry, but I'm not coming. And then obviously I was going with Mick and the Shell Advance team. So yeah, that was good.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, luckily, yeah.
Was that on the V2?
That was on the V-twin, yeah.
Which was that? Well, look at that, 2001.
2001 with Leon, yeah.
Chris Walker on the other side.
On the 500 V4.
500 V4.
Yeah.
After finishing second, 2000.
Exactly.
You both moved on at the same time.
Yeah. He got paid a little bit more than me, though, but
yeah.
He deserved it, though.
Tough season for him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can remember at Dorrington, when he was walking back when the bike had blown up. Bless him.
And then another tough season, banging his head on.
He had a lot of crashes on that thing.
If I remember rightly, you'll know this as much as anybody else. When you ride at that time, I don't know if it's changed a bit now, but when you rode for HRC then, I remember Chris, I'm sure this was in his book or he's told me in conversation.
Yeah.
It's a Honda. That's how you ride it. No, you can't change the rear sets. No, you can't change the bar positions. Because he'd come from a production background, first proper full Grand Prix bike.
Yeah.
It was a proper NSR 500 V4.
Yeah.
But never comfortable.
No, never. But I think that was also Chris because he was used to the bike sliding and moving. Well, then things just turn on a sixpence. They just turn.
A stiff chassis, not
stiff.
No
chassis,
hinge in the middle.
No, it's just like, completely opposite of what he's used to. And I think they tried to put his riding position just to suit him.
Yeah.
But it was the wrong way. I don't know. It's a shame, really, because he never really got a proper chance at it. I think the working window that HRC said was that, and that's what they had to do. Where obviously it's progressed slightly since then. But, I mean, he never really got comfortable and he never really got on with it. It was just a beast for him to ride. And, he was never confident in it, for sure.
How many stories can't you tell me about a young 18, 19-year-old Leon Haslam in Spain?
A fair few, but Leon was good. I got on with him. I still speak to him now. I rung him, I think it was just before Christmas and stuff and Holly, but he was a good kid. For a start, I thought, he's going to be a wanker, isn't he, this guy? And I thought, give him the benefit of the doubt, because obviously I'd known him, but never really known him, if you know what I mean. And I thought, he's going to be a little.
And it's amazing how rumour gets ahead of because somebody's had a bad experience.
And I thought, I'm not going to judge him from everybody else. And from when I first met him, brilliant. Liam was fantastic. Ron, Anne, the whole Haslams was absolutely fantastic people. And I thought, why did this, for a start, I thought Liam was going to be an arsehole. But he was absolutely fantastic. And not many people think that. They probably think, oh, he's a stuck-up little kid or whatever. But no, not a chance. You know, he's done a lot of things on motorbikes that people never do, you know. So, yeah, no, it completely changed me. And I was like, and I worked for Leon, and it was fantastic. Really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I agree completely. In the world that we operate, there's always somebody somewhere that's pissed off with somebody.
Yeah, from whatever, but you don't want that.
You can't cloud your judgment.
It can't go through. No, exactly. It can't go through to other people.
No.
That's for them to decide, and you decide yourself. I mean,
something that I've always, there's so many people over the years, and you meet them, and it goes over time, and you, what are you talking to him for? He's a dick. Well, he's always been all right with me.
Exactly. And
so I can only speak as I find.
Exactly. And that was it. And I thought, do you know what? He's a nice lad. And when they're like that with you, I mean, Leon was brilliant. And I mean, he'd come and stay with the boys. He wouldn't go home. He'd stay in the motorhome or whatever, and we'd go. I mean, luckily, once we'd finished the bikes, I think we had 2 jet skis from the workshop. We had a speedboat that we could go out on. And I was living on the Costa Brava in a paid apartment with, I think there was 2 or 3 Australian lads, Ben, Adam, really good guys. You know, we'd just come from all around the world to work there. And Mick, obviously. And, just fantastic times, you know, young lad.
In your early 20s.
In the early 20s, living the dream. Yeah, it was just like, wow, this is fantastic. And like I say, Costa Brava, fantastic place. Yeah.
What are your best memories of that season?
I think a lot of it was just spinning Grand Prix, just to be there. And like I say, Rossi was on the 2-stroke, Caparossi, they was your Grand Prix riders, you know. And I think even meeting Mick Doohan in Australia, because obviously Jeff Hardwick was Shell Advance Honda, and obviously I think he'd previously sponsored Mick or whatever. He had a tie with Mick anyway. Mick come in the garage, it was like, to meet Mick Doohan, he was like the legend, you know. So probably that, and it was just more of being in the paddock and being involved with the 2-strokes as well, because 2-strokes obviously you changed everything. You did cranks, you did pistons, you did everything. Where nowadays it's much more involved, like we'll talk about it later. But yeah, I think it was just to be in the Grand Prix scene and see how it was and how glamorous it was and stuff like that. But you still had to work, don't get me wrong, but it was, but probably just like I say, just to actually be there.
Tell me about the first time you walked into the GP paddock as a Grand Prix mechanic.
I remember going to Jerez, and it was just like, it was really basic, if I'm honest. You know, you go into Jerez and you think, we had a little bit of carpet on the ground. We had no panels, just 2 500 V-twins in a toolbox, mixing fuel and tyre warmers on a tyre rack. And that was about it. And it was just like Leon had come in his leathers and helmet and stuff. And it's like, well, is there anything else? You know what I mean? Where's everything else? But it was just, that's how it, I mean, look at it now with the garage systems and everything and the lighting and all that lot. Where back then when you had a test, you'd pack all your bannering away because then you could get off quick.
Yeah.
You know, and you just have 2 bikes, toolbox, mixing of fuel, tyres, do your testing.
Get in, do a job.
Do your job and get out, yeah. They weren't bothered about how it looked, you know.
But then you come to your first race weekend.
Suzuka. I remember Suzuka was
the first one?
Suzuka was the first one. I did a test there, and then I think we had a week off, and then we had a race there. Yeah. So Suzuka was the first race. It was quite strange. I took a knife and fork with me, because I wasn't very good at chopsticks then. Obviously, I'm all right now because I've progressed slightly.
You did, was it 11 years with Honda?
I remember, yeah. I remember we were staying near, and I think it was the Green Tree, I think. I used to catch a bus to work. And, took a knife and fork with me. And I thought I'll be all right because at least I can eat at the end of it. But Suzuka is like, wow, Suzuka circuit. I'd never been to Suzuka before. I'd never been out of the country, really, approached. But yeah. Fantastic, Suzuka. Wow. You know, brilliant.
Was it heat then? Was it early season? Was it not 8 hour?
No, it's not too bad at all. No, it's just like a normal
proper Japanese spring.
Yeah. It was nice. It was good. It was really good. Yeah.
But how did that season progress overall?
We had a few good results with the V-twin, but the V-twin was never going to win races. No. You know, Leon did the best he can. I mean, I can't remember his best result off the top of my head, but I know he had a good result in Brazil. And then when he finished the race, he said, I want a wheelie down the back straight. And the back straight in Brazil, it was really, really long. And I remember him coming down there and the thing was like wobbling. I'm thinking, just don't crash it, please. And anyway, he come back and he said, yeah, I've wheelied the back straight. So I was like, all right, well, we must be all right then.
He's happy now.
Yeah.
But then, so from that point, you've gone from your first year in the MotoGP paddock on a V2, 1 year with Leon and Mick Shanley, great bloke.
Yeah,
we have to say it.
Yeah, no,
He
got me involved with Grand Prix. So yeah, he got me involved with Grand Prix racing.
And then the next season, you get your hands on the pucker.
The NSR 500, yeah.
Tell me about that, because that's the ultimate racing motorsport.
I mean, I was going to stay with Shell Advance for the next year.
Yeah.
But the team kind of it did fold, but then Pramac took the whole team on.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So luckily, Simon Bleasdale, he rung me and he said, do you want to come with a Pramac thing? And I said, yeah, I'm interested, because I didn't have a job at that time, because obviously the Shell thing had folded through. And obviously Mick had gone there as a mechanic as well. Who's the rider going to be? Tetsuya Rada, my hero from 93. You know, he's like, fantastic. And I'll be the only person that to work for your idol is incredible. You know, because I loved in 93, well, obviously Schwantz was another one.
Yeah.
But I liked Terada because he was like the newcomer and he won the championship in his first year. And obviously his style and everything was fantastic. But to work for him was another level, you know. And his wife, Miyuki, I mean, she could drink red wine for anybody, you know. But yeah, I was like, yeah, definitely, without a doubt, yeah.
So tell me about that season. Tell me about working on the NSR.
The NSR was beautiful. And it was the last year that they made it.
Yeah. Because
obviously that year was the first year of the 4 strokes. So obviously Rossi and them was all on the RCV.
Yeah.
And Ukawa. I think, who else was on them? I can't remember off the top of my head. I know later on Barros got one.
Was that after now? Was Gibernau after?
I can't remember. I don't think Gibernau rode one. It was later. It was more Telefonica years with Kato.
Dajira Kato,
yeah, that was a bit later on. That was 2003. 2002, 2000, it'd be 2000. Maybe it was riding for them. I can't remember exactly. But I know that obviously that was the reason. Obviously it was 2-stroke and 4-stroke together. But the NSR was just beautiful. I think we had 8 sets of carburetors. And there were banana ones as well, magnesium. And I remember we did a test I think it was in Suzuka. And then we was flying to Sepang to do another test. So we'd split the freight so that both bikes was in and toolboxes and stuff. And they said, would you take a set of carburetors in my hand luggage? And I'm like, because they only had one set, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll take them. So I had to blow all the fuel out of them and put them in a bubble wrap. And I remember going through his hand luggage, like, what are these? He says, the carburetors. Oh, yeah, no worries, off you pop. I mean, nowadays, you just put them in a box and ship them. But yeah, no, then it was just like, yeah, put them in your hand luggage and go with them. Yeah.
Did you move to Italy for that one?
I lived just north of, where is it? Yeah, just north of Bologna, not far from Bologna. Brescia, no, it wasn't Brescia, north of Bologna. That's where the Pramac was based, basically. And they had a little workshop on the side that they built with a mezzanine floor and all stuff like that. And yeah, I lived there for probably 9 months, 10 months, which was all right, but it was a bit... The Japanese would go in every day to the workshop when there's nothing to do, just so they could go on the internet and what have you. And it's like, there's nothing to do around here, you know? And I thought, I'm not really enjoying it. But you have to kind of stick with it and stuff like that. I mean, me, Simon and Mick, when we was there, if we didn't want there, we'd go home. We'd try and fly on from Florence or whatever.
It's not bad for a couple of hours.
No, exactly. So, but the Japanese look hard at the workshop every day and this, that and the other. And it's like, you don't really need to be at the workshop every day. But they did it because they had nothing else to do.
Yeah, that's what they do.
The Japanese, that if they're out of Japan, they go to the workshop and they're on the internet, they're sending emails or what have you.
Very early days of the internet as well.
Yeah, it was dial-up. And
proper dial.
all that, yeah, it was real early on.
Remember those days?
But like I say, you had to do it because that's where the team was based. That's where they wanted you to be. And okay, that's fair enough. That's just how it has to be, I suppose.
And now, as we sit here in 2025, they're the reigning MotoGP champions.
Yeah. I mean, I did another year with them in 2004. It was with Tamada.
Yeah.
That was another, but we'll talk about that in a little while. I did another season with Pramac. Yeah, which we won races, which we'll talk about that later as well.
Which then you get what's in a good stuff.
Yeah, bearing in mind, up to this point, I ain't really won anything.
No. But it's amazing how mechanics will go through their careers with great teams, whether it, again, British Superbike, World Superbike, and maybe not win a race,
No, well,
let alone win a championship.
I mean, I've won races with different riders and stuff, but I've never won a championship. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. It's one of them things that's happened and I managed to achieve that, but it's not for trying.
That's a stars aligning thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we've had stars almost aligned and then it's gone to shit at some places, but we'll talk about that a bit later on. Yeah.
So what happened at the end of, that was 02?
02 with Tamadi, mate.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, it was fantastic, but Tetsuya decided to retire. One thing, he rode at Donington on the 500, and it was probably going to be his best result, and I think it was his best result. And, I mean, fantastic. He was always good at Donington anyway. And I think he'd qualified 5th or some fairly close to the front. And I think he was running 3rd in the race against the 4-strokes, you know, the Yamahas and the stuff like that. And you're thinking, wow, we're going to be on the podium here. And bugger me, I think he overshot the Melbourne Loop and then come back on and I think he finished 5th in the end. But I remember 2 of my friends, they were other side of I was doing the pit board and they were other side and they were just going like this. And that was a couple of mates of mine from school. And they were like, so pleased, obviously, even for him to finish 5th. The team was as well. The team was really happy with 5th because you're against like all the 4-stroke and stuff like that, you know.
But he was a 2-stroke man through, wasn't he? Because he'd done the 250s, World Championships, Aprilia and everything else.
I mean, on the 500 Aprilia, he was incredible.
Yeah.
You know, and I learned some stories, obviously, you know, when him and Caparossi took him off and that was potentially a World Championship. The mechanics was fighting in the garage. It was, I wouldn't want to be in that garage for sure.
And these are the stories that don't come out. There is fierce rivalry, especially at Grand Prix. Even more so, it's even more secretive, I think, than it's ever been before.
Yeah. The first person you want to beat is your teammate.
Yeah.
And I mean, previous guys who I've worked with, we'll talk about it later, but they said, you must hate them, hate them. And it's like, yeah, but I've got to work with them every day. I said, you don't, but they did. Like, you've got to work with them every day.
You've still got another race to go or another session or another season, whatever.
You know? You must hate them. You just want to beat them all the time. It's like, I do, but I can't be like that. You know, I can't hate people just because they work for the guy next door.
So when the change came then from Harada to Team Roberts, how did that come about?
Basically, Tetsuya.
So, while I look through your history, you like the Japanese riders, don't you?
I've been through. I had a few, but I've worked.
What happens on tour stays on tour, Johnny.
No, I've worked for a few Japanese riders, and I think our luck of the draw. Really, you don't choose your riders.
You go to the team, and then they allocate you wherever you go. So it's a Nobuatsu Aoki.
The Roberts thing. Well, Harada had decided to retire, which. Fantastic. I've still got a bottle of his wine up there, by the way. That's in the cabinet. At the bottom of his wine.
It's his own wine as well.
Yeah, he had his own vineyard in, I think, near Monaco.
Incredible.
Yeah, and I've still got it that's from 98. It's probably going to taste like shit. But vinegar, but I just keep it up there. But yeah, he decided to retire, and him and Nobu were really close friends anyway. And I remember I thought, well, I didn't have a job. I went to Cadwell Park and there was I think it was a supermoto race. And a few of the BSB or the British Superbike lads was riding and stuff like that. And I saw a guy there called Traves. I can't remember his first name. Traves, his second name. And he said he was working for Roberts the previous year. And he said, have you got a job? And I said, I haven't actually. And he said, give Les Jones a ring at Team Roberts. He said, there might be something there. And I was like, all right. So on Monday morning I said, I rung Roberts up. Les, how you doing? Yeah, if you fancy popping down, we'll have a chat. So off I pops to Banbury, which was fair trek, but not too bad. Anyway, I gets there and they're saying, would you like to work in the I'm like, well, hang on a minute, I've only just arrived. And it was kind of they were doing this massive thing about you building their own bike, the V5. Would I be interested? And obviously spoke to Chuck Aslan, he was a really nice guy, and his dad as well, bud. Really nice people. And I thought, I'll have a bit of that. Why not? Yeah, because I didn't have anything else really going. And then I saw this lad who had told me to ring him, and I spoke to him, and so it was just like, right, okay. But it means going to the workshop every day. Okay, so you have to get a bed and breakfast sorted in round Banbury area, and yeah, so it just went really quick there. That was it kind of sorting. I was working with a lad called Ian Gilpin. He works for Yamaha now.
Yamaha now, isn't he?
Yeah, I've been real friendly with Ian for a long time, because he used to come from Belfast every week to work at Roberts. So in the week we could do anything we wanted. Obviously, the workshop was hours at night time, so you could learn how to weld, machine.
Bozzy didn't teach you how to weld, did he?
Bozzy wasn't there. Bozzy had left.
Oh, had he gone by that
yeah,
point? We know Bozzy's welding story.
Yeah, but it was good because obviously all the lads would leave the workshop. And me and Ian, we had nothing to do because at night time you either go back to your room and that's it. So me and Ian would say, "Oh, we'll make some these brackets up or whatever, and learn to mill, learn to lathe and stuff like that," which was fantastic. All the facilities there, as long as you cleaned it, put it back to how it was, that was how it was, and which was perfect, So I was learning a lot more there because of the facilities that they had, But like I say, we used to remote control cars once. I said, "Oh, we'll get a remote control car." So I went and bought a kit, built it in about 2 hours at night time. We was having a Chinese in the mess room. And he said, "I'll bring one next week," And he brought this fucking remote control car. It was like this big with disc brakes. And I'm like, fucking just pissed on my strawberries completely, And
Got your little tab on.
I've still got it in the garage.
Yeah.
Still got it in the garage. Mine was like a Subaru Impreza, and I think it's still got my name and Ian's name on the back that I made a little label. But anyway, and he brought this thing and it was just like next level. And I'm thinking, God, where are we going to... Anyway, there was a massive big car park where it was. And we set off without just messing about. And he set off with this thing and it catapulted off the curb and it went like that, come back down and landed. And it had twisted all the frame just from that. And that was it. It was broken. I'm like, yes, you know what I mean? That's pissed on your strawberries because mine still runs and yours doesn't,
I can run into a brick wall, it'll be fine.
Yeah. But we did stuff like at night time just because you had nothing else to do. We used to play football with the BAR Formula One team.
Oh, you could
play with them on a Wednesday night or something just for an hour, which was great. It was good fun.
It's meeting new people, isn't it? And
yeah,
connections.
Absolutely.
The whole thing works with connections.
Because they had a lot of Formula One people involved with that Roberts thing.
Yes.
Which possibly wasn't the right way to do it. But that wasn't for me to decide, I remember John Barnard, he was involved there and he come to me once and he said, "I want the brake lines the same length." And I was like, "Why?" And he said, "Oh, just because the same length with the same pressure." And I was like, and he wanted them to go down the fork tubes, round the bottom and on baffle calipers. And I'm like, yeah, but if you go from fully extended to fully bottomed out, I said, you're going to be, they're going to be like this, hanging up. Or if you wheelie, the things are going to pop off back of the calipers. Yeah. And he was from a car background, not a motorcycle.
There's a whole different dynamic.
Completely. And I just thought, but the thing was at Roberts, they were all like scared of him, scared of the Formula One. He was like the boss. I mean, yeah, he had his own, I think it was a carbon fibre business that did the first carbon fibre gearboxes.
Right.
He made a load of bodywork for us. Well, it was heavier than the Titanic, this bodywork, because he kind of saw it to protect the bike.
Ah, okay. So it was a shell. Yeah.
So it was like a shell to protect. Well, it was so big and heavy, and then
it's just for keeping the wind off, mate. Yeah, that's all it's for.
And basically, they joined it at the bottom, like in two pieces, but it wouldn't hold fluid. And in the rule book, you have
it's got to be able to.
So we used to put duct tape on the bottom of it. But this is the thing, because it was more Formula One motorcycles. It was very, we had a few run-ins with the F1 and the bike scene. But for learning, that was a great year for me learning.
Tell me about Kenny.
Yeah, what a character. Absolutely brilliant, Kenny.
I've spoken to Boz about him, and the stories are just brilliant. Oh, well, what are your experiences with Kenny Roberts?
Obviously, me and Ian had worked with there for a long time. Yeah. Since the Marlborough days on the 250 and stuff. And Kenny used to come in at night time, and me and him, he says, "What are you two fuckers doing here?" You know what I mean? He'd be like that, and was just nothing to do, was watching football or out like that. And he would just have a chat round, a walk round, and then he'd bugger off in his little blooming Proton back to his house or whatever. But I remember we was racing somewhere, and the garage was really quiet. I think everybody gone for dinner, and I was just tightening something up before I always like to try and finish something before I go for dinner. I don't like to leave it loose or anything. And he just come in, and he was on his own, and he just went, "You ain't got time, boy." I said, "Time for what, Kenny?" He says, "Time to suck my cock." And I'm like, fucking hell. And I went, get the little fucking thing out then, Kenny. I says, but I want more than a fucking toothpick. And he just started fucking, but because you give him it back, he fucking loved it.
Yeah.
You know, because you give him a bit of stick back, he loved it. And I always got on really well with him, to the point where when I left, I just said to him, I said, thanks for this year, Kenny. I said, but I'm leaving and I'm going to the next team, which was the Honda team at Camell. And he says, I don't blame you now. He said, this place is fucked. And I'm like, fuck, that's Kenny Roberts, you know. But a real nice guy, wanted things done properly, wanted it done correctly, you know, but respected all the mechanics and everything. He was never, I mean, we used to fly everywhere. It was always good flights, you know. We all travelled in same clothing.
Yeah.
You know, it's very, they did spend a lot of money on just the image.
The whole image side, it was important, wasn't it?
Image, just travelling or whatever, you know, even the trucks and everything. It was all, the toolboxes were incredible. We had all the tools was all melted in foam, and you had your own toolbox and everything. It was incredible there, yeah. Yeah.
The old man of the sport was there as well.
Mick Williams, fantastic guy. Fantastic person, so fast, you know, like even obviously when they was doing the 4-stroke with Roberts, they were still using the 2-stroke at the start of it because the 4-stroke wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Previous to that, I think Jeremy was fast. He was pole position at Phillip Island.
That's right.
You know, on the 3-cylinder, which was incredible. And I think he'd have probably won the race, but he'd probably crashed. I don't know. But yeah, great guy. Absolutely fantastic guy. I always had a bit of time for everybody. And that's who Ian used to work for him, and I worked for Nobu, you see. Yeah. But I met a load of great guys there who was from Formula One. But like you say, I don't know where they are now or anything, but some really good like mechanics, really good even like engineers who was building stuff, and also like welders, fabricators, fantastic people and so good at it. You know, they're probably working in Formula One now and in machining and stuff like that. But
does that not help raise your game and help raise your outlet? I think taking the best from everybody, was that something you could do?
Yeah, you'd learn from people.
Yeah.
You'd definitely learn from people, and they'd do something probably a little bit different how you would. You think, oh, that's not a bad way to do that. But even later on, you'd learn from some people. Like you say, you never stop learning from anyone. You know,
some of the parts of everybody you've ever met.
Absolutely, yeah.
Big believer.
I mean, like one guy, I'd never worked with carbon and resin and stuff, and he says, "Right, we're going to." The only all we was doing was making the board. So when he came into the pits, he just went like that, so he could just go into. He knew where he was going to go into the pits.
Yeah.
And it was these boards, and he says, "Right, you're going to make them." I'm like, "All right, no worries." I said, "But I've never done anything with carbon or resin, and fuck me, we made these two things. They're absolutely beautiful." You know, he said, "Whoa." And it's all because...
Surprised you haven't got it in the shed.
No, I ain't got it in my shed. We used it in the team. It's probably in a container in America somewhere. Kenny's still got them.
Don't throw anything away.
Yeah.
Randy's haircut.
Oh, in Malaysia. That was...
You've given me a few points at Lightpole. You've been kind enough to give me a few pointers to keep us on track.
Randy's a character anyway.
And the toilet paper.
Oh, man, the toilet paper one. That was...
And Brazil Airport. We've missed a couple of stories about it.
The toilet paper one was the classic. I mean, it was my second or third long-haul flight. I think it was from Malaysia. And we're all in the back. And Randy was walking up from the toilet with his toilet paper. And everybody pretty much in the back was from racing. So everybody on the aisle basically put their hands out like that. And we're all thinking, what the fuck's he doing here? And he brought a toilet paper all the way to the back of the aircraft, right? And then he walked back and he went 3, 2, 1, and he pressed the toilet flush. And this toilet paper went down the airplane as fast as you can imagine. It went all the way down. And then everybody cheered when it had gone through the door. And it's basically, the toilet, that's what happened. It just, because obviously it works on suction and just gets rid of it, it just kept, and it pulled it from the back of the airplane straight through the top. And then Randy come out like and cheering. It's like, oh my God. So probably it released, it's out back of the airplane going like this. But yeah, that was one of the things. God, and Bennett. Yeah.
What was the story of Brazil Airport?
The Brazil Airport, that was fantastic because I think we'd finished the race and was coming home. And
this is back with Leon. This is back with Leon.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. You're just remembering stories, isn't it? But I remember it was like, I think we had a 9-hour delay or something stupid, like, and we're all, but it's like bearing in mind that they're most of the Paddock. I think one of Ross's boys, it was either Uccio or Valentino or even Melandri, because they're always cliques together, you know what I mean? And they bought this football, and the airport's absolutely empty because it was middle of the night. So we started lofting this football bat. So there's like a full-on football game going in the middle of the airport, and the security wasn't bothered because there was nobody there. All the shops were shut, and we had these 2 goals, and there was all riders, and it was just the biggest game of football to keep you occupied for so long. And I think, like I said, I'm sure Melandri bought a football, or one of them guys did. So we were just playing football in Brazil Airport for like 2 hours. You know, you're absolutely sweating, you know, it was that warm in there, but it just passed the time, and then we all got on the flight and came home. But yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah, to be playing football with Valentino Rossi. Yeah.
Was that your only excursion with Valentino and Mark?
I had a few, to be fair, because later on when I worked for Danny, obviously Rossi knew that I worked for him. Yeah. And Danny was a very good rider, and they got on really, really well, and had a lot of respect for each other. And he kind of knew who I was, because he always used to acknowledge me. If I was walking up the paddock or anything, he'd always just acknowledge you and stuff. And I remember there was one time, Gary Johnson, the local racer from Broughton, he come out to Laguna Seca, and he needed a room to stay in. And that bloke at work managed to sort him a room out because he had a few spare. And Gary Johnson had got absolutely wasted on the Sunday night at the party. And I gets in the lift. I think it was I gets in the lift to go down for food, and Gary was in there, like sat down, completely already shit-faced.
That's when you know it's at the limit.
And then Rossi gets in at the next level, and I'm like, ciao, yeah, ciao, and then like that. And Gary Johnson was laid on the floor pretty much, and Rossi was like, he's had a few drinks, you know what I mean? And apparently he was there for like 2 hours, something. Gary didn't even get up, just going up and down in the lift, because he was that shit-faced. Obviously, we got down and we was off out for food and what have you, and he was still in there. So yeah, I don't know exactly what happened, but yeah, he'd had a few drinks, let's say, and we was only just going out from finishing work. Yeah, but that was another thing. Rossi got in and he was like, wow, you know, good fair play.
I'd spoken to Brent Gladwin.
Yeah, who good lad, Blake.
Great friends with. Yeah. And he tried to send me a few pointers. I'm waving. Ask him about this. Ask him about that. Did he go to a place of ill repute with Marco and Valentino? Probably not. I don't know.
Yeah, there are some things you can't really say, but yeah.
This is what he's trying to fish for. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I fully appreciate there are things that can be told and things that can't be told.
Some things can't be told, really.
We'll save those for another day. Tell me about Randy's haircut.
Malaysia, I mean, Randy was always a bit of a character. You know, he's liked to play a few jokes and stuff like that. And he came in with this wig. And I thought, because obviously Randy's a bit like me now, you know, he's completely nothing on top. And he came in with this wig, and it was like a 70s. And Kenny says, what the fuck you got on your hair? What's that? What's that thing you're wearing? He says, come here. And so basically Kenny started cutting Randy's hair. You know, so he sat down and Kenny was cutting it. So he cut this like a fringe and then Randy would wear it out. He'd just walk out with it and people would be like, have you seen Randy? He's wearing a fucking wig, you know? And Kenny would give him like a full-on fringe and all that lot. But it's just like, but he'd do it just for a bit of reaction, a bit of fun, you know what I mean? And yeah, fair. So Kenny was cutting it in the office. I remember sat watching him.
I find that age of racers are fascinating.
Yeah,
your Roger Burnett's, your Roger Marshall, your Randy's. That was the age of the true rock stars.
Well, like I told you before, I had a QR50 and it had number 11 on it. My dad got a little star because I like Roger. I followed Roger Marshall because he wore the black helmet with a white star on, and that's what I had, number 11 with a little gold star on my QR50 when I was about 4-year-old. Yeah, so yeah.
Absolutely, we love Reg. He's
brilliant,
just what a guy, and Roger as well. Roger's been it'll come out in the next couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks or so. But for this year at BSB, Roger's been incredibly influential in helping me with a new role in BSB.
Yeah,
but that will. I'll tell you about it after. But for the ladies and gentlemen watching and listening, it'll become apparent over the next few.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, new merch. Do you like our new merch? Will be available, and I'll tell you about it later. How did the job at Pramac come about? Obviously, you've been there before, but
I'd been there before, and basically, the Robertson was great, but I wanted to be winning races.
Yeah.
It was just, I could have stayed there, but travelling to Banbury every week and rah was a bit too. I just had enough of it, basically, and I think Luca Monteron rung me up. He was like the basic team principal. And he said, we want you to come and work with Tamada. I said, okay. And it was obviously on Bridgestone tyres. And also they was running the test rider for Bridgestone with Shinichi Ito.
Okay.
Another Japanese rider.
First man ever to do 200 miles an hour on a GP bike.
Exactly. Yeah. So Chinchan, I mean, he still looks the same now as he did 45, 50 years ago. Bless him. But anyway, so I said, yeah, I don't mind that. He said, but you've got to have your Arctic license. So I was like, that's not a problem. I said, I'll make sure I've got my Arctic license and we'll go from there. Okay, perfect. So I gets on with that. What I learned from with a guy in Scunthorpe, Dent, I think his name was Barry Dent, I think it was. Got my HGV, job done. That was perfect. That was my side of the story done. And then obviously, we're going to work for Tamada with the Camell. Obviously, the Camell and basically Biaggi was the same teams, but we had to have a war between because he was on Michelin.
Yeah, different tyres.
And we was on Bridgestones. Yeah. But obviously I was basically, there was two main mechanics and I was like in between them both. So there's a guy called Marquino who actually works for, I think Marquez's brother.
All right.
So Alex, he works for Alex, but he worked for Mark last year. Obviously in the Grassini team.
Yes.
And now obviously he's been in racing as well. So yeah, that's what it started. Oh, okay, perfect. So that was going to be that thing. So it's kind of okay, as long as I've got my HGV, away we go. And that was it. So yeah, but it was more, I didn't have to go to the workshop as much as I did before. You know, before I was like there for 9 months and stuff, where now I could do the work and then come home. You know, there was
a bit more freedom and
flexibility. Same workshop as it was before, because I remember I used to practice reversing a truck in on your blind side. We had a Scania 3/3 split truck that obviously I was driving and practicing reversing into the garage, because obviously I'm going to have to do that later on at the circuit. And I thought, I don't want to look a complete tit going backwards. But anyway, that was that. So
they do like them lined up in MotoGP.
They do, yeah. I had to do a great job at doing that. All the people, all the staff there, they're really, really good. Ricky and them, they're good lads, real good lads.
We'll try and get, we've spoken to Rick a few times.
He's a real good guy, Rick.
I have so much time for him.
Yeah, he's brilliant. All right, my lover. Just thought I'd get that one in there for him. Yeah, you know.
He does listen to the show as well, and we did invite him on, but he's like, he's not too sure at the moment. I think there's too much going on.
Yeah.
But Rick Crichton, lovely fella.
Great guy. Absolutely great. But all the other people, even Irene.
Yeah.
Irene, fantastic lady. She looked after me. She's basic for passes and stuff. It's all changed now. But when I started, it was Johnny Honey. That's who she was writing my passes under. And you just go and ask to say, do you mind if I, and she'd be like, yeah, no problem. And then all I would do at the end of the year, I'd just send her some flowers.
Nice touch.
Or something like, just to say thank you. But half the time she said, me and Mike have gone to America, so the next door neighbour's got the basket of flowers. So later, I'd just send him a bit later on, so she'd have them a bit later. But even Mike, bless him, he was a real nice guy as well.
There's a lot of people speak highly of Mike Trimby. Yeah, speak to Keith and Jules and everybody. Nobody has got a bad word to say about Mike.
He was fantastic.
He's done so much for Grand Prix race and for British riders as well.
Completely.
He was such to bang the drum for the British riders.
Yeah, you needed somebody who was that guy.
Yeah,
he was absolutely fantastic.
With Dorna being Spanish and Italian mainly, to have someone in there batting the British flag.
Exactly.
It was necessary. It had a very, very sad loss.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that was your first year on the new. It was the new 4-straight for you.
I mean, that
211V.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful bike, made for racing, made 4-stroke, obviously.
Yeah.
Honda, I mean, the quality's there straight away. Tamada, potentially race winner, let's say. Ito was a test rider. Obviously, we had to change colours. So for the test, it'd go all into Pramac colours.
Yeah.
The white and the red. And then for the race weekends, it'd go back to the yellow. I mean, we used to sticker them. They were just the Camell was just it was a blue oval. And the body was just yellow and everything was stickered. Because in Brazil, I put a longer cock on the Camell and I've got a picture of it somewhere. And it did 7 laps in qualifying. And I thought I'd best take it off because I think Tamada was on the top 3. So if I'd seen that going round on camera, I'd have been like, well, explain that one, you know. I put like an extra 2 or 3 inches on it. So it was like, I've got a picture of it somewhere.
I was going to say we need photos of
I'll have to get that. I'll have to get that.
Absolutely need photos of that.
I remember putting just for a bit of fun. And
absolutely.
But then when he's 3rd, you think, fuck, I best take it off because if it goes on camera,
it's good in part Fermi.
Yeah, part Fermi in a minute. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Is it me? I'm sure, and this might be from the Superbike times when because he won a couple of wildcard races.
Yeah,
Sugo, didn't he?
Sugo, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was a very, very good rider.
Yeah.
Very good rider. And he didn't speak much English at all. But I got on really well with him. There's a lot of all my riders I've got on with. But such really talented and wasn't scared about mixing it with people either. Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic to work with. Super fast, super normal. You know, I'm still friends with him now, I think. Yeah, I still speak to him.
Am I dreaming it? Or did I read somewhere, and I can't remember who or why or what, but somebody had given him the nickname Cheesin'?
I think, that's pretty much. Yeah. But we used to just, it was all, you could have a laugh and a joke with him, and half the time he didn't understand what you were saying anyway.
Jesus,
you know, but he used to love it. But you'd give him, me and Marquino would just say, what's happening? And he'd be like, don't know. What's happening? Cheese and tomato? Don't know. Great, but just so fast and so naturally fast. Didn't really have to work at it. You know, and he'd rode the cabin bike before and stuff like that.
Beautiful colours, cabin bike.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favourites. Everybody goes on about Rothmans and things, but the cabin Honda.
Yeah, especially, I think it was the 1000 SP. That was fantastic, that thing. Yeah. But with the camel bike, basically, I remember we went to Albacete with Max. Max was riding the other bike, and obviously Makoto, and was doing some filming. And it was absolutely fucking freezing. And I mean, I think it was minus 17 at night. We had to take the water out of the bikes because we didn't want the crankcases to crack. Yeah, it was freezing. And they wanted to do like wheelies and with following a car. And we said, yeah, but it's fucking freezing cold. You've got to be really careful. Anyway, they did all the filming. And they said, right, now you've got to go out and look like you've won a race, because we had also obviously the cameras there. So they both come over the line, and we had to go out with just a shirt on and look like you're going to win a race. And it's like, I'm absolutely fucking freezing. And Tamara had come in and he'd be like, Samui, which is cold in Japanese, and he'd be just like this, trying to keep warm. And it was fucking freezing in Albacete to do some fucking photo shoot. Yeah.
The things the other side of things you have to do.
You had to do it. And I think I've still got the disc somewhere with it all on, all the pictures and stuff. But yeah, you had to do it. You know, that's what they wanted to do. So, yeah.
First win?
First win for me.
Look at that.
Yeah, first win for me in Brazil.
Yeah.
It was quite strange because the mechanic said to me on Saturday night, he said, go and just clean the grid, which you weren't really supposed to do. But I went out there, everybody was doing it. And I just took a little brush and just brushed it, because obviously you've got to. Everybody else is doing it, so you do it. So I went out there, and I think he started like 7th something. We didn't expect it. And fuck me, the way he rode was just absolutely fantastic. I think he passed Biaggi, because Biaggi was in second, and then just pulled about 3.5 seconds on Max, which was like, wow. You know,
don't normally do that.
No, you don't normally do that with Biaggi. And yeah, what a feeling to be. I remember ringing my mum and dad, and I was in tears, and they was, you know, and it was just like first victory in Grand Prix, and you've beaten the best riders in the world with that rider. It was just fantastic. Yeah.
What's it like in the garage after a first win?
It all packs down very easy. You get the music on. Well, we used to get the music on, and nothing's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, just, okay, you've got to take that. Okay, no problem. Completely opposite if you have a shit weekend. If you have a shit weekend, it's like, oh, I've got to pack up. But to pack up after a race win, you go and pick the bike up from Park Therme, and half the teams will be out and say, oh, compliment it, or good job, or whatever, when you're pushing the bike back.
That's nice.
Fantastic. And I always did it if like Ducati come past or whatever, or if I was walking, I would say, it's sportsmanship, innit, at the end of the day. And it doesn't take much, you know, and you never know who's in that garage. Oh, that guy said thanks very much. So yeah, I always said, well done, guys. You know, it's how it is. And yeah, that was for me the first victory in Grand Prix racing, 2004.
You got 2 that year.
He actually won again in Japan, because he had a good race in Portugal, but him and Rossi, he didn't understand a lot of English, and I think Rossi had said something like, "I will play with him tomorrow, don't worry," and Tamada had said basically back, "I'll play with you in Japan." And it was kind of a thing. But in Japan, he was just incredible. Absolutely incredible. I think nearly every session he was fastest. And he won the race. And it was just like a fairy tale win. Obviously, Honda, Motegi, it was just, yeah. And I don't know if it was Brazil or Motegi, but I think Brazil should have been De Girocato's birthday.
Oh, really?
And obviously Makoto was really friendly with De Giro. So for him to win, I think he goes like that. And I think it was in Brazil. That would have been the anniversary of his birthday. So that meant a lot to him as well. So as everything, yeah, to win that victory in Brazil was good. And also the one in Japan. Fantastic.
It just, they're points in history.
Yeah. And also Bridgestone tyres,
Yeah.
Japanese. So they was absolutely over the moon as well.
I ask it of everybody. I think I know what the answer is to this because of what you've said earlier. Do you allow yourself to be in the moment as much as possible?
I think you do, because it don't come very often. You know, if you, I mean, like later on with Danny, we had 9 podiums in a row. Every weekend he was on the podium, which is absolutely incredible. You know, and if he wasn't on the podium, he's in the gravel, let's say. But I think you have to really enjoy it. And like, even when the KTM, when we won races with Brad, some of the guys in there had never won a race. And like even Tex Giesler, 125 rider, great guy. He said, Johnny, I said, I don't know how to be. I said, just enjoy it, mate. That's all you can do, you know? Because
you
never know when your next one is. And you also, how do you be? What are you meant to do, you know? So yeah, just enjoy it for the moment, definitely.
Because you want to go really deep, you never know when that one win's going to be your last.
Exactly.
Because you might choose different teams.
Exactly.
So
you don't know when you're going to get another one.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's a weird old world that we live in, that everything is for the now.
Yeah.
Because it's the next session, it's the next race, it's the next flight. Everything is pushing forward all the time.
Yeah.
So when people drop out of the paddock, they don't get forgotten about, but nobody's looking that way.
No, exactly. I mean, I remember they had a party in Brazil, obviously, when I think Max was second, so it was like Camell 1-2.
Yeah.
Massive party. The Camell guy paid for everything. And I remember Christophe Leonce, he works at KTM now, a real good friend of mine. I worked with him with Biaggi and all that bit later on. Real good mechanic. Probably one of the best mechanics I've worked with, let's say. Pup's the same level. Real good mechanics. But Christophe was working with Max in the Camell team, and I was working with Makoto. And Christophe never really drunk much. And he said, order me something strong, Johnny. And I went, okay. So I ordered him a double gin and tonic or something. And he went, make that 2, like that. And he was, Christophe was absolutely on one. I thought, fair, but you don't get that option. You don't get that happening very much. So, and he had his arm, he's like, hey, well, good job today, like this. And you're thinking, yeah, then tomorrow we have to fly home, you know what I mean? But like I say, just enjoy it for what it was.
You've got a 14-hour flight home.
Yeah, look forward to that one.
Did you get, there's 2 stories from that time that you've mentioned to me, the truck being pulled and the airport sleepover.
Oh, the truck, yeah. It was my first time driving out of the workshop, and I'd been driving, bearing in mind, absolutely shitting myself, because it's all stickered up Camell Honda, and it's all like,
look at me.
Yeah. Brand new truck, brand new trailer, and all. It just looks the business, you know what I mean?
Kids waving to you out.
I did not want to touch this on any curb or anything like that, so I'm driving nice and steady. And I think from Italy to Spain, there must be about 50 odd tunnels and about 15 tolls or something. So anyway, I sets off driving from the workshop, and it's a bit of a tight road. And then we get onto the freeway. I thought, oh, perfect. It's not so bad on the freeway. Fuck me, within 10 minutes, police. Woo! And I'm like, Marquino just said to me, I was driving with it at the time, he said, just pull over. He said, they'll just want a cap or something like that. I was like, all right then. So bearing in mind, I'd been driving an Arctic lorry for like 25 minutes, and then I'm pulled over by the police. So it's like, I ain't done anything wrong. Everything's fine. And they just pulled us over. Gadget. Do you have a gadget? So it's like a cap and I was, yeah, no problem. Marquino got 2 out the top because we always had a little bit of a stash in the cab. Gave him 2 caps, and he just stopped the highway completely and let us pull straight back onto the highway. And I was like, perfect. Because if you're not, you probably won't get out for 15 minutes because it'd be that busy.
Yeah.
Because they pull you over in the most obscure places ever. But yeah, that was that. It was just like,
15, 20 minutes I've been driving and I'm pulled over by the fucking police and all they want is a cap, you know. So it's like I shit myself, but at the time it's like, well, they just want the cap. That's all they want, the gadget. So that was that one.
How useful is it to have HGV in your arsenal to become to work as a mechanic and become part of a team?
Now not as much.
Okay.
Because they have a truck driver to come in and do the truck driving.
True. Yeah.
When I did it, the mechanics did a lot of the truck driving as well as their work.
I know I spoke to Alex Briggs over the years, and Alex used to drive for HRC.
Yeah, they all used to
Belgium.
We used to drive back to Belgium, and it is like it was good that in that era to have your HGV. But I think now not so much because your job's too busy doing what you do in the garage.
Right.
You know, I wouldn't say. I think the HRC guys have only just stopped this year.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because they all used to drive a truck, but used to get money for doing it.
Yes.
Which was a good thing. But I don't think so much now you need your HGV. No.
Just anybody who's thinking of...
Yeah, doing it. The other story you mentioned, that was the sleepover with Yamaha in the airport. For some reason, we had a booking in a hotel, gets to the hotel, no booking. And I'm like, it was like 12:15 at night. So we had to walk from there to the airport. I think it was Milan Malpensa airport. And I mean, I think it was just after coming back from Brazil. So Tamada was the race winner. And then we had to basically sleep in the airport. We had no hotel. It was organised, but it wasn't organised. It was overbooked, so they'd probably give the room to somebody else because we arrived there at a certain time. So bless me and him had to sleep in the airport. It was empty all night. And I said to the woman, she's like, the travel coordinator the next day, she says, "Oh my God, what did you?" I said, "We had to sleep in the fucking airport." I said, "Well, what's she going to do? We had to fly the next morning." So yeah, that was kind of a baptism as fire. You just won the race and then you're sleeping in a airport because there's no hotel for you. But Tamada, fair play to him. Makoto, he just kind of got on with it. Yeah, it is what it is.
This is a situation we're in. Let's just deal with it.
Yeah, so we just sat there. I think we had a couple of beers from the shop that was still open. And yeah, it was just me and him. But walking on the road with your suitcase. Yeah. And it was fucking freezing, I remember. And you're thinking, God. And it was like, I think it was like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. I thought, this is glamorous, isn't it?
This is what I signed up for.
This is what, race win to this.
This is where we're at. Should we take a break at this point?
Can do for me, mate.
Because then we get into Repsol Honda and
later on.
That goes on from there. Yeah. So making it into the big league, what you would class as the big league, the next step from Pramac.
The factory team.
Into factory Honda, into Repsol Honda.
Yeah.
That's the pinnacle for any mechanic and rider at that time in MotoGP.
It was where everybody wanted to be.
Yeah.
Now, I had to leave the Camell team because obviously it was the same kind of thing. It was living again in Italy a little bit more and things like that. But with the Repsol team, you could actually work from home. Do you know what I mean? So basically, I could live from home, live in the UK, but work for the factory team. So I remember Roger, who's a good guy, a good friend still. He rung me up and he said, "Want you to work? Don't sign anything. There's a contract coming through." But that's when they used to send contracts via TNT or DHL or even basically from Belgium. So it came. I got my contract. I signed it. It was all official HRC contract. You'll be working for Max Biaggi. Yeah. Anyway,
Sorry, did you know that before the contract came, or was that just the contract with HRC?
Yeah.
This is who your rider will be.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, that's fair enough. It is what it is. To be fair, I knew Max a little bit only because of the Camell thing. Great rider, absolutely fantastic, precise. But that's all I really knew of him then. And but more for me, the factory team. He flew business class everywhere. I would be driving the truck in Europe with Rog. You know, because they had 3 trucks. So the Pup drove one and Craig drove one and Roger drove one. So there was a lot of us, obviously English lads as well.
The good English contingent.
Yeah, which was quite good really because we all kind of travelled together and did everything together, which was brilliant.
And the name of Craig Burton popping up again.
Yeah, Bertie, good lad, real good, still friends with him now. Yeah.
He's at Louth as well.
He's at Louth, yeah.
Maybe he's another one that'll end up on the show.
Very good fisherman, likes his fishing.
I see on
Cat
Facebook.
fishing,
Yeah.
yeah, really, really good. But a good mechanic as well, and very good at organising. He's always one step ahead of everybody else organising and stuff.
Useful to have that behind you.
Yeah.
Like you say, the
Yeah.
pup organisation, Craig Burton's
It's all
you
about
can't do it without it.
organisation and communication. And if you've got that, fantastic. Everything just falls into place.
Job's a dream.
Yeah, if you ain't got that, then you're in a world of shit.
I was going to ask if there's been in a team that have that throws people under the bus. So tell me about that first season, because there's a lot gone on in that first year. Was that 2005?
2000, that was with Max. Yeah.
And then started with Danny
Danny at the end of the year.
in 2000, which obviously we'll come on to Estoril.
Yeah. We'll talk about that.
That side of things.
Yeah.
Tell me about that first year, working with Max and being a factory HRC mechanic.
The thing was with Max was he was such a talented rider, but he kind of knew it.
Ooh.
You know, and he said to me once, I think it was Mugello, because obviously Mugello Italian round, and he said, this is the most important race of the year for me. And I said, I was just blunt. I said, every race should be the most important. And he kind of like looked at me and just walked off. And I thought, well, I'm only being honest, you know, that's my opinion, because it doesn't matter if you have a podium here, you should be having a podium at the next race and trying to win the next race.
That's how you put a championship season together.
Yeah, but I think he was already, he understood that he was already on his decline, basically, from MotoGP. There was rumour he was going to ride for the Suzuki with the Camell money the year later and all this, that and the other. But yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough then. I was working with Irv Kanemoto, a really, really true gentleman. I'll tell you, a really, really nice guy, you know. And a little story, I remember Irv, because I was racing a bit of 250s then, just for a bit of fun. And obviously Irv knew a thing or two about 250s and 500s. And he said to me, because I was racing at Cadwell one weekend, and he said, Johnny, just be careful left-hand side of the front tyre. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Irv. Fuck me, I crashed at the gooseneck and off the left-hand side of the front tyre. And I thought, Irv was right.
Because that's the first left since turn one.
Yeah. He knew, he just said, just be careful left-hand side of the front tyre. And I mean, Irv Kanemoto, legend, you know, absolute. He used to say all his settings was in paper. He never had a computer.
Really?
Yeah. He used to come with his folder, and it was absolutely full of just papers of settings and stuff, you know. And what a guy. But just to actually work with him.
The history that he had with HRC,
but also with Max.
With Max,
that's another reason why.
And Freddie Spencer and all the people that he worked with. That's fascinating.
Yeah. He was a really nice guy, a true gentleman, especially to motorcycle racing. Anyway,
what was the biggest thing you learnt from him?
Be calm, be relaxed, don't rush in. He never used to swear. He used to say shoot. He never used to swear. He never used to say shit. He used to say shoot. Oh, shoot, man. Yeah. Never used to swear.
Freddie's influence.
Most probably, yeah. But real nice guy. I got on well with him.
Just that season, that Nicky's first year? Second year?
That was Nicky's, must have been his second year.
Second year, wasn't it? So you got Nicky on the other side of the garage.
Yeah. Real good guy, Nicky.
Did Max and Nicky get on?
Not really. Which you could, I remember in Jerez, there's two, we used to have one garage, but there's two doors, one at each side. And I went out the garage, and I think they'd had an altercation on track or something. Either Max had brake checked him or done something, and which you don't do, you know, but Max was just an ass like that, I think. And I went out the garage door and looked at them. They were both on the tail lift on the trailer. And Nicky was like, I'll fucking have you now. And he had his shirt, his jacket off his back, and he was going to start scrapping. I just went, woo, and just shut the door again and thought, I'm not getting involved with that one. Max would do things like that just to wind people up or get into them a little bit, because I think he was getting in too far out of everybody else. So yeah, they did not get on at all. But Max was like that. We did a test in Barcelona, and he was fastest at the test. Incredible, just riding really well. And then we went to Jerez. The bikes had not changed, and he just lost the plot. He just came in and could not do the lap time. I mean, Max used to ride the bike in straight into the garage and grab the front brake, and then he'd take 4 meters of carpet with him. Do you know what I mean? And then just jump off the bike, and he'd shake the hands of all the Japanese people, then went and locked himself in his motorhome for like 3 hours. And we was sat there waiting, and he came back over, and I think Iwano, the crew chief at the time, he went to his motorhome, knocked on the door, no answer, came back. So I think that was kind of the end of Max Biaggi, really.
Sort of coming to terms with what was on the way.
Yeah. And it was just, he came back and we just did mapping. But the week before he was fastest in the test. And then this time he was 16th and couldn't do a lap time. But I think that happens. Sometimes they just can't do it that day. I had it with Danny later on. It was like we had a Friday in Assen and he was absolutely nowhere. And he was frustrated. And I said, just come back tomorrow. And he came back tomorrow, different day, and the lap time was there.
They're only human.
They have off days.
Yeah.
They
have days where we can't be asked to do stuff. We have days where it doesn't work.
They're exactly the same.
But theirs is just glaringly obvious, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's in front of a camera and it's a sport and what have you.
There might be something gone on at home.
You don't know.
Family members ill. You don't stubbed the toe as they got out of bed in the morning.
With things that you don't know.
No, that's the thing. You can't. To be performing at that level all the time, you can understand why now, how riders are the way they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's very few characters. Mark, he does his best to be a character with his rubbish dad dancing.
Yeah.
But he's enjoying himself.
He's found his mojo back for me.
Yeah, 100%.
He really has. And when you look at him on track, he's riding that thing properly. Yeah.
He's still an alien, isn't he?
He is.
He is the last of the aliens. There are no more.
There's not many left. When you
Pecco's a great rider. Jorge Martin's a great rider.
Very boring, aren't they? Very boring. It's like you see the picture of the old aliens and there's like, they're all grey and there's just Mark that's colourful.
Yeah, didn't somebody present with it? He's the last one.
Yeah, and he's the last one of all that lot that are still there.
Because you go back to, nobody really liked Casey.
Nah.
But you'll understand this, and we'll digress slightly on this because you're right in that. You know what you fully understand. You were at Repsol Honda when Casey was
there. Yeah. Casey came with his guys from Ducati.
Yeah. Because of the Valentino Rossi effect, I find so many people missed just how good a rider Danny was.
Danny was good. Casey was good. Yeah.
Jorge Lorenzo.
Yeah.
Sete to a point.
Yeah.
But those, the four that included Valentino.
Yeah.
Light years above everything else.
Completely. I was there when Rossi got a 10-second penalty in Phillip Island and he had to win the race by 10 seconds and he just fucking did it. He beat Caparossi by, I think it was 10.11 seconds or something like that. He just, and that just shows you it's just incredible.
He's helped people up their game.
Oh, completely.
Because he was the pinnacle.
But also then on the reverse to that, Danny, Casey, Lorenzo helped him because he had to up his game.
Of course, absolutely, yeah. Everybody was
because when Danny came in and when Casey came in and Lorenzo, he really had to work at it then because they thought, "Fuck, these guys are good." Before he hadn't had that.
No, again for KRJR, bless him, and
exactly. Don't get me wrong, super talented riders,
all faster than me,
and faster than me as well. But they were like the new kids on the block. Yeah. And they came in and they were like, wow, these guys they're a bit different to what they used to be. Fair play to Valentino. He stuck at it and he got it and he worked at it and he got there and he could beat them or match them at least. Yeah. Which is what he had to do.
And then came Mark.
And that just pissed on everybody's strawberries half the time. Yeah. But super talented guy, but we'll come to that in a bit. We've got a bit to talk through.
We've got a little bit to go through.
Yeah.
What's the story of Wayne Gardner in Oz?
He basically, they come to us and said, can Wayne do a few laps on the bike? And I was like, but it's before the race. It's like, and he come in and, I want this foot peg changing down. I want this. And I'm like, not doing that. We're not changing anything. It's just a few laps for you to just wave to people. And I thought, for HRC to let that happen was very odd for me. They should have organised a bloody Fireblade or something with his number on and let him ride that. But somebody had said okay at HRC for him to ride the bike in Phillip Island. So, all right then. But he wanted handlebars changing, and I think they just said no. You'd have to ride it as it is because we need the bike.
Yeah,
and Max needs to race.
And they give it a wipe down, put a bit more fuel in. He's off it again.
A new set of tyres, and away you go. Yeah. So. Anyway, he went out and I think they put the rain map in as well, which is a lot softer and smooth and what have you.
And I think he enjoyed it. I think Digger really enjoyed it and what have you, but it was so scary for me because if he'd launched it and then they did a bike swap, we had no spare bike. And it was so close to the race. I think it was like within half or an hour from when you meant to get the race going, it was out. So he came in, we had to check it over and then get ready for the race again. Luckily, it was probably the spare bike, but still, it was there. It happened, but it shouldn't have really happened for me. Yeah.
So, what an incredible scenario. You can't imagine that happening now.
No. Well, they'd just get...
You wouldn't put
Fireblade or...
Casey out on Pecco's spare bike.
They'd have a road RCV or something or whatever, you know, but they would never do a race bike now. No.
Because it's Wayne. The history of HRC is still
it's
there.
Like KTM did it with a few people, but they'd just bring the test team's bike and use that and let them ride that, because if anything happened, it doesn't really matter. The race team's fine. It's nothing to do with us. So, yeah.
Something else from that year. So through that year with Max, first year with Max, 5th overall, 4 podiums. That's not a bad start to a Repsol Honda career.
No, it was good. He's good. I mean, Max was, I mean, on his day, he was incredible. You know, smooth, fast. It's just, he was, for me, his biggest problem was himself. And he was always worried about what everybody else had and not what he had. And when you like that, it's only going to go one way.
Some riders can't help themselves with that.
No. He would be into Grassini or what's Sete running, what's this? I want to change chassis. I mean, the classic for me was in Sepang. I think we did 5 chassis changes for Max. That was our job, to check chassis, because
I know,
in the early days, it is, but I think in the early days, the pivot was fixed on the RCV.
Okay.
So to change the pivot, you had to change the chassis.
Right.
Like now, they're fully adjustable with little cups. But so that was it. If you wanted to change pivot, you had to change the chassis. So mechanic-wise, I mean, I worked with some great guys. Mark Barnett, really good guy from New Zealand. Christophe again, Leonce from France. Really good mechanics who I work with, and Bertie as well. And it was like we was there busy doing one chassis. They were still testing at the same time. And then we'd get the bike pretty much finished. Right, that one would go out. And it was so busy. And I used to wave Max out from the garage. And because I was flat out changing a chassis, there was nobody to wave him out. And of course, he went out as Nicky Hayden came in and smashed into each other. And both the bikes are in the pit lane, because Max just used to go out and never even look. Just because of that's how he was. He was just Biaggi. And Nicky came in like that, close to the garage door, and bang, both bikes on the side. I think Rossi went past. He must have been pissing himself with laughter that them two were in the gravel, but in the pit lane, let's say. And Max was blaming him, and then he blamed me because I wasn't there to wave him off. And I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm changing your fucking chassis here, you know. And it was just like, oh dear. But it was the same thing with the Biaggi Aura. It was like, yeah, we got everything tested, but yeah, it was a bit. And then I remember we'd finished obviously the chassis and stuff, and he was still going out, and I waved him out, and he kind of went like that, as if to say, yeah, you should have been here before. And I thought, well, sorry, mate, but I'm busy changing the chassis. So
got shit to do.
Yeah. That was a funny story, but yeah, that was the Biaggi, let's say.
So if you mention Qatar, does that bring back a story of grown-up magazines?
Oh, yeah, with the Japanese. Yeah, they say if anybody doesn't know this, if you get a Japanese pornographic magazine, they're all blurred out in the private areas,
aren't they?
But if you got out your eyes like Japanese, you can actually see them a little bit.
For those of us listening to this, Johnny's just squinting.
You're squinting. So anyway, Roger comes in and said the freight's been held or something like that. The freight's been held because of some contraband.
Good word. Like it.
And we're like, what the fuck? What contraband? Who has cigarettes or something like that?
Exactly that.
And we never put anything like this. And then all of a sudden it was Japanese pornographic magazines. But the thing was, the Japanese was trying to blame the Europeans for taking it. And we're like, it's your fucking magazines. So some Japanese guy had to own up, but we never found out who it was. But yeah, basically it got, because obviously Qatar, it's like, you can't have anything like that there.
Of all the places to go.
Dangerous place for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so one Japanese had to put his hand up, and I never found out who it was, but yeah. But they were trying to blame us for it. We're like, hang on a minute, how does that work?
It's nothing to do with us. We've got proper ones.
But yeah, that was one of the funny things from the Japanese staff anyway.
Was it a relief when you changed from Max to Danny?
It was, I remember end of the year, Max, I think, was obviously racing in Valencia.
Yeah.
And Max crashed in the warm-up, one from last corner, the big fast left.
Yep.
And smashed the bike to pieces. And he went out the garage, and there's me, Oggo, Christoph, and was all busy getting his bike fixed. And he came in the garage, he did the race, he finished 5th. And he never came back to the garage after that. Yeah, he never come in and said thank you or anything. He basically went out the garage, and from that point on, we never saw him again. Yeah, very strange. But then I saw him in later years, and he was a different person. Ciao, Johnny, you all right? And I'm like, but I think that was it. Once you got him away from the circuit, he was a different person, but a lot of riders are. But he was to an extreme, I think.
That's like a pub story about John Kaczynski winning the Superbike Championship. Off he went, and didn't see him for 27 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and then when you see him, he's in a garage and he comes in. Exactly. It's like
nothing's changed.
Yeah. Yeah. It was with Max, it was very like that. It was like, thanks for he didn't say thanks. He came in, he finished the race, he did his debrief, out the door. That was it. And then we was basically pulling number 3 stickers off and putting 26s on. But Danny came in, and Danny was he'd watch you. You know, he'd watch you, and it took a while for him to trust who you was and everything, but he knew that we weren't idiots, you know. And even Mike Leitner came as a crew chief, you know. Mike would have his opinion, and everybody else, that's one thing, you could have your opinion because you knew what you was doing, you know. And when Danny came, he'd watch what you was doing and all. And obviously then I worked there I think I was there for 12 years.
Yeah.
And in the end, I still speak to him now, you know. He's still friends with him now, so yeah, I must have done something right.
It's building relationships.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
And that's a lot of the sport thrives on that, because you are a team.
Yeah.
The riders out on track on their own.
Yeah.
But they can't do it without the mechanics, the crew
exactly.
chief, the data engineer, hospitality, everybody that's part of that team.
Yeah, and I think with Danny, he would understand you as a person, and you would understand. But I would say to him my opinion, and if he didn't like it, he'd take it on board, but he wouldn't be angry with it.
No.
But I'd say, well, I don't think you're doing something wrong there, you know. And he used to, like I say, he'd come and have a word with you, and he'd be like, yeah, but I won't do that anyway. But it's such a bright kid, such a bright rider, you know. Really, he probably wanted to understand too much.
That's always a difficult situation.
Because but he could feel things. But in some hands he could, and some hands he couldn't. Because I remember sometime later on, he was going out, and there was something, I can't remember, something wrong with the bike, or something was loose or something, but he didn't feel it. But I think we owned up and said something was loose, either tank was loose or something, and he didn't feel it. But then he'd feel 2 millimeter or 0.5 millimeter on the ride eye or something like that. But yeah, but a great rider. Great rider.
How much did his stature go against him?
Well, this is one thing. People seem to think, Danny's so small, so he got a really good start, always really good starts. Yeah, but he's still got to muscle that thing around.
It's how he got through the twisty bits that was more impressive.
He so struggled with high speed changing up because he was only small. But people, he'd get a good start, but then he's still got to ride the thing, you know. And so for me, he was at a disadvantage because of his size. And when he used to crash, I'll tell you, he used to smash himself to pieces. And I remember lifting him out the truck in Saxon Ring when I think he was about 7.5 seconds in the lead when he crashed in the wet. I think it was 2008.
Turn one
in the wet. And he was basically 1.4 seconds a lap faster than Casey every lap. And Alberto Puig put on the board with Jordi, a Spanish guy who was doing the board then, I wasn't. And he was lying to him on times. I think he said he got plus 1.7. And he was like 3.5 seconds in front because he wanted to keep the pressure on the rider. But this is where when I've done the board, I just put exactly what it is and what he needs to know, and keeping it as simple as possible.
Why would you do anything different? I don't understand that.
Because that's Alberto Puig for you.
Yeah.
He's a great person, but very strange person as well. And for me, it was more, he was working with a rider in the rider's head there, where he shouldn't have to. You know, Danny was doing everything he wanted, and he was winning the race, doing great. I mean,
It's not club racing or British Champions. This is top level racing.
Yeah, I think he was leading the championship by 18 points or something then, and he would have extended it. But then he crashed at turn 1, and he was like Bugs Bunny into the air fence, and he broke both his ankles and his wrist. And I remember lifting him out of the truck, and I had to put him in the car because he couldn't walk. And he tried to go to Laguna, which was the next race.
Of all places. And I think he did about 6 laps, and he came in and just said, not a chance. So then we was like weekend free. We didn't really do much. Yeah, it was a bit of it was great, but like he was leading the championship up to that point, and he didn't really need to push anymore. But that's part of racing, I suppose. Part of life's rich tapestry of racing.
Yeah, like I said before, the stars have aligned in some areas, but it wasn't that one.
Tell me about 2006.
2006 was good. Good year.
First year with him.
Got on really well with him. Good, like I say, can't really ask more of a rider.
Big year in the garage.
Big year in the garage. Obviously won the race in China. First race for Danny, which was great. Brilliant. Just the whole season. I mean, he at that point I think it was in Portugal when the Nicky accident happened. And at that point, Danny could theoretically, mathematically, still win the championship. But from that point on, I think Colin was in the front and he was slowing people down. And Danny went into the corner and he clipped the inside of the curb. And obviously took Nicky off. And it was like, oh dear. Because Nicky was obviously leading the championship at that point. And then obviously with him DNFing, Rossi took the lead. So, but I mean, fair play to Rossi. He kept his head down and kept going. And Nicky I think at one point he was 47 points in front of Rossi, but he'd had some shit results and what have you. And I think 9th in Assen when Rossi won and a DNF here and there. And that didn't really help when Danny took him off in Portugal.
Was it the same race Elias won?
Yes.
He took the 5 points off him, didn't he?
5 points that he needed. If he'd have got them.
Pivotal.
Yeah. And for me, that was like, honestly, the knife edge, the atmosphere in the garage, you could have cut it because it was just like, obviously Puck was working for Nicky and he'd be pissed off and what have you. And we'd be like, fuck, you know what? But none of them the mechanics was not an issue, you know? And even Puck come to me and I said, look, I'm sorry. He said, mate, the riders do what they do on the track. We do what we do in here, you know?
Couldn't agree more. You can't exactly what they do on the track.
And they can, and fair play to Danny. I mean, he came back and Alberto took him to Nicky's motorhome and Nicky was fucking revving as you would be. But like Danny said, look, I will help him as much as I can in Valencia. And he did. But yeah, I mean, you couldn't write it that happened that end of the year when Rossi crashed on the out lap or first lap of the race. And it's like, wow, they've got a chance here.
Here we go.
You know, and then
kind of redemption one.
Yeah. And then Danny, obviously, he kept people away from him and let them go and he kept people away and backing up. But yeah, afterwards, what a party. Yeah, I've never held a trophy, only Nicky's. That's the only one I've held. Because obviously I didn't work for him, but it was a team and just fantastic. It was in Spain in the Feria, the hotel we used to stay at. And yeah, just a great night. It was brilliant. Yeah.
Another one of those nights.
Yeah. I mean, for Nicky as well, God bless him. He deserved it. He put a lot of work in, you know, and eventually he had more points than everybody else.
That's what wins championships.
And he deserved it, you know. And yeah, fair play to him.
So with the record, I wrote the record down: 31 wins, 113 podiums, 30 pole positions, 46 fastest laps, an average finish of 4th position, with an average grid position of 5th.
It's not bad, is it?
It's incredible. When you look at those stats, in that age, that time, with those riders, with Valentino, with Nicky, with Casey. Yeah.
Fair play. You've done your maths there, haven't you?
It's incredible. I'll do a bit of research before I come out. I don't come into these things blind.
Well, I'm quite impressed with that. Proper.
But you were part of every single one of those?
Pretty much, yeah. The one in, I think that's Indy on the wall when he won. There's a picture on the wall there. Yes, but look how small he is there. And I'm not big. I'm not tall, am I?
You're literally looking at him off the ground. That's incredible. What was he? Was he 5'4"? 5'1"?
I think 5'1". I think about when he had leathers and everything, he was about 59, 60 kilos.
Yeah. The power to weight.
Yeah. The guy said, I mean, like Cal said, Crutchlow, he's a freak of nature to ride them bikes like that.
Because you look at your Hickeys and your Scott Reddings and the MotoGP rider of today, 5'6", 60 kilos.
But I mean, that's absolutely lean.
Well, you could see Valentino in his later years.
Yeah.
He had to be 0% fat and he looked ill towards the end of it.
He had to be like that.
Because he was nearer 6 foot than 5'8".
Yeah, exactly.
You look at Mark now, 5'8", 60 kilos.
But he's the same. He's just lean. He's strong. He's powerful. But they all are. Brad's the same.
Yeah.
Absolutely lean. You know, just a proper athlete now. Before they weren't so much athletes, but now they're proper athletes. I mean, training wise and the regime, the diet they have to do.
How has a rider evolved? Here's a question for you. How has a rider evolved in terms of their approach to racing from your time with Mara and Hizzy at national level to now, over the last couple of years, working with Brad?
I think, obviously, they know they've still got to race and they've still got to do that. But now it's more about your hydration and endurance and all. They weren't bothered about that in them days. They just got on the bike. I mean, they'd have probably a tin of Coke before they rode the bike or something and got on with it, where now they have the diet plan and they have the hydration and what they warm up, skipping rope or cycling. And now it's so much more intense for them, you know, because they're training and they have to get training. I remember, I think it was with Red Bull, they'd send both athletes, like say Brad and Jack, to a place where in Red Bull that they'd check what power wattage they were doing. And if they wasn't at a certain power wattage, they'd give them another 2 or 3 weeks to try and change it. And if they didn't, they would take a percentage of money off them. Yeah. Yeah. As a contract, because they're not fulfilling their, I think it was something like that. If they're not fit enough, they will.
There's a base threshold that they need to achieve,
and you need to, yeah. So they have to work it. I mean, I think Jack had to go back once but then obviously he was training more and then it was fine. But that's what it's like now. Yeah.
It takes the edge off it and takes the enjoyment off it a little.
Well,
and there's media commitments now more than ever before. The scrutiny with cameras, as we saw at Kota this weekend, just gone. Everybody was on about Mark and his decision to do what he did. But then the footage came out of the whole conversation.
Yeah. With his crew chief.
Who was filming that?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody was.
How the hell did that go? There is no escape.
No.
Unless there's a documentary being filmed and they've taken the footage from that.
But they shouldn't have done.
For that to come out, that's a personal conversation between rider
and it wasn't long ago, was it? Yeah.
And they were wrong, as it turns out, in what they said. But to have that thought process on the grid when most people are going, can you just hurry up?
Yeah.
He's actually trying to get in everybody's heads and go, I will win at all costs.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a bit of speculation on that now, isn't there? So I don't know where that's going to end up.
I think they changed the rules.
Yeah, they'll definitely, but they always do.
They'll always do. If anybody finds a loophole, they'll close it.
Then they'll change the rule later.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how they do it.
It was a fascinating scenario.
I think one that somebody had put on it was like the sprint race. And it's like 3 or 4 riders run up the pit lane. It's like, that's the sprint race. I thought that was quite good, that. Yeah.
We were out in Austin a couple of years ago. What an amazing place.
Fantastic place.
I would hazard that with you not travelling the MotoGP, that's the one place you'll miss.
That and Phillip Island.
Yeah.
Phillip Island's a long way away, but a fantastic place.
It's like 2 stops from me.
Yeah. Fantastic place. A lot of good people out there, a lot of friends out there. But like Austin for like they say, the music and the nightlife and stuff like that, it's brilliant. Yeah. And it's not a long way away, let's say. It's not a far distance.
9.5 hours on the flight, 10 hours on the flight.
Not too bad at all. Yeah.
Doable.
Yeah.
So have we got some stories from that? What else? What other stories have we got on that time? Laguna Seca restaurant.
Oh, the restaurant one. That was another one. Obviously,
you got your notes.
Yeah, I'm just looking through them.
This is how we do it. We have notes each
to get through them. Nicky had won the race. I think it was, Nicky had won the race and Danny was second and Danny had set a lap record. And this is how we're going to go to this restaurant. And it was on the front, real nice place. Monterey, beautiful. And they started, but like, oh, you can have food and normal. Like, And then the Japanese started ordering like bottles of wine, but like $200 each. And we're like, getting a bit out of control there. I mean, we'd had a few drinks, but we didn't go crazy.
Yeah.
And the Japanese were some there red-faced and singing, and you're like, what's going on here? Anyway, the bill came and it was extortionate. And then I think the week later, we'd got a bollocking for spending too much money.
Oh.
Or it costing too much. And we're like, hang on a minute.
Not my fault,
The
Jake.
Japanese was going berserk. And then in the end, they're like, I think they basically saw how much wine was on there. And the Japanese had ordered all this wine. And it was like, they were trying to blame us. It's like nothing to do with us. The Japanese was ordering it. But that's what they're like. They're just, they just go completely crazy sometimes. They just go red-faced and just berserk.
For such a polite and quiet nation that they purport to be, they can party.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've seen my team manager at the time. He was that drunk he could not walk. They had to walk, and we saw him, and he's hugging us, and Johnny-san, I love you, and all this, that, and the other. And then, not even 10 hours later, meet him in the lift, and he's like, "Morning, Johnny-san," and you're like, "Last night, last night you loved me, and now you're just like, morning." That was it. It was just quite ironic from one extreme to in about 10 hours. But that's what they're like.
I'm terrible at drinking anyway, so I would never be able to. I've always been.
I did it once before, and I just thought, you know what? Traveling the next day after a load of drink, it's not nice.
The rest of it, with the height, with the altitude,
You just feel proper shit. It takes a while to it.
That was one of Matt Lloyd's stories, wasn't it? After he'd gone was he going to Japan? I can't remember where he was. Somewhere out in the Far East.
Yeah.
With Colin Wright and everybody. It just slept the whole journey because it was just too much.
Well, going back to I had one in, it was my birthday in South Africa in 2001 with Leon and Chris Walker. And I had a massive night there. Chris got me drunk. His girlfriend at the time was putting tequila in my beers. Fell completely over, backwards off a stool in the bar. They said, he's got to leave, because obviously if you leave, if that happened. Went back to the hotel. There was a cast iron table and chairs. I tried to run straight through that and cut my eye open. I've still got a scar on my eye. And then fell into the swimming pool. And obviously,
now that's a way
danger. And I walked to the end and then come up, and there was Leon Haslam up there, and he got me out. Fair play to him. And I got taken back to the room by Simon Bleasdale, I think Mick Shanley and Leon. And I was laid on the floor, and I was just absolutely shit-faced. And to a point where I got into bed. First they got me in the shower and clothed, obviously.
Yeah.
Hot water. I was like, that's nice. Cold water, shivering. They're doing hot and cold. Got a load of pictures afterwards. Obviously, they're all like this next to me. Honestly. Anyway, put me to bed and I was all right. I think Mick had got a bucket just in case I was sick. And I woke up next morning, but we had to drive to Johannesburg from Welcome, where we used to race in Welcome. And they said, don't stop on that road because it's dangerous. And I said, all right. And anyway, I remember waking up and feeling, this is rough. And felt sick. I had to pull over on the highway, I think twice, to be sick outside the door. They didn't want us to stop, but we had to. Gets to the airport, sick again in the sink, in the toilets, and what a mess. And then I flew to Nairobi first. No idea why. It was probably a cheap ticket or something.
It would want to be.
Yeah. So anyway, we set off, and I remember I put the eye patches on my face, and I just wanted to be left there. And obviously I'd cut my eye open the night before. So obviously we landed, I took the eye patch off, then blood started running down my face. And the air hostess, are you okay? What's happened? I'm like, no, I'm okay. And we get to Nairobi, and we had a 9-hour delay in Nairobi. It was just like a tin shack. And I slept for 9 hours, and then got on the flight back to the UK and landed in London, and I was absolutely fine once I got there. But in between that, I was absolutely sick as a dog. And it was my 21st birthday, so it's something that I'll never forget. Yeah. Blooming heck.
The times, they're the ones that you remember.
Yeah. But I blamed Chris Walker's girlfriend at the time because she was putting tequila in my beer and not saying anything. And
See, that's cheeky. That.
Yeah, but that was the era.
No, I agree. Yeah. That's kind of what happened.
Yeah.
What's the story about Alberto Puch and the Red Bull?
It all started off. I said, "Can I have a couple of tins of Red Bull?" So in my toolbox, he'd put 2 tins of Red Bull, and then I think it was the next day there was a crate of Red Bull, like a hand crate, and I thought, who's brought that? And Alberto would just smile and carry on. And then I was at home once, right? And this 7.5-ton truck arrived. And I'm like, what's this? Anyway, pallet jack out. A full crate of Red Bull arrived at my mum and dad's house.
Wow.
And I'm like, what is going on? It said, with compliments, Alberto Puig. So I thought, right, you bastard, I'm going to get you back here somewhere. Anyway, so it went on, and he was always laughing, but I'd never say anything to him. And Danny was fast in Sachsenring. I think he was fastest in the race, in the practice and stuff. And Alberto likes to drink, they call it screwdriver, a vodka and orange. I drink screw. I said, all right. And I thought, right. So I got my mankini, a green mankini on. And I went down to the bar. I said to the boys, I said to Craig and Pup, I said, do you like to film this? And went downstairs and got a screwdriver. And I'm going to deliver it Alberto's room. So I knocked on the door, and he came to the door, and I said, room service, like that, and walked in, and I had this screwdriver, and I was just dancing like, woo, like he's dancing, and boy, he absolutely wet himself. And it was just payback for all the Red Bull shit he'd been sending me. And I think I've got a picture on my phone somewhere of me and him. He's got his drink in his hand, and I'm in just a mankini in a hotel like lobby of in Sachsenring. So yeah, but you had to have a little bit of fun when you was there, because if not, you'd drive yourself mad. Yeah,
there's a fine balance.
There is, and that you know when to be funny, but you know when to be serious. And that's one thing when I was at KTM, you knew when you could have a laugh and knew when you had to be serious. And that was a real good, but everybody knew it because of where you was.
It comes with experience.
It comes with experience. I mean, with all the experience there, you know, now's the point you can have a laugh. No, we need to be serious about now. And that was another good thing, that you knew where you was with it. Yeah.
What are your favourite memories with Danny as you look back?
Oh, I've got a fair few. Race wins, definitely. Obviously, that one in Indy, that was a good one. For me, possibly the best race he did, 2012 in Brno, with Lorenzo. Him and Lorenzo were battling every lap. And it was the first time for me that Danny had really gone with him, because in previous, it had been Lorenzo would do what he did and Danny would break and he'd finish second or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that Danny really kept at him and kept going at him, because he was faster in some places. And I really liked that, because obviously Danny was like the underdog, because Lorenzo was fantastic. He was incredible. I mean, you look at his lap charts in some races and all the laps are within like 0.3 or 0.4 of a second. And it's just like, wow.
Just how hard is that to do?
Over 20 laps, say, to do them like, it's just like incredible. But that was how Jorge was. Yeah. He was just like that. Once he got in a rhythm, you wouldn't break it. And for me, Danny in that race, he really kept fighting and kept digging in, because he was like the kind of underdog, because of previous, he'd always get beaten up.
Yeah.
You know, and he kept battling. And I remember the last lap, I'm thinking, he's going to do this. He's going to do this. And I was like, when he came over the line, because I think Jorge went in really deep and he looks like he's in front of him, but he won't get the bike turned. And then Danny like kind of comes straight across the front of him and come to the line. And when he came to the line, I was like a wild baboon behind the fence going like this. And it was the best feeling ever, just because he kept fighting and he kept believing in himself, and he won the race. But it was just like, everybody was just like, wow, what a race, because he'd done what he had to do. And Lorenzo was broken. And that's when I got the trophy also for the team. I went on the podium, which is another memorable thing for me, because I only did it once.
Yeah.
Because they used to alternate it for people. That was probably the race. Also, I think it was 2012 in Valencia when it rained.
Yeah.
And then there was a few riders that came in and started from pit lane. I think Nicky was one of them on the Ducati. Danny was definitely one, because we had to get the spare bike ready for him. I can't remember who the others was. And the track was like, it was damp, but there was like a dry patch. And the patch would probably be a foot wide, maybe. And Danny set off, obviously, he's dead last but he just kept plugging in and he was fast and he kept going. And all of a sudden, he was passing Braddle. He passed Braddle on the wet with slicks on, Danny did. And he passed Braddle and Braddle was like, how's he doing that?
Yeah.
And I think at one time on the board, I had plus 43 seconds because he'd lapped up to sixth place, Danny had.
It's an incredible.
Yeah, it was just like, it was because obviously with it damp, some people had wets and you've got to keep on. If you come in for a bike swap, you're going to do nothing. And Danny come in at the right time on the warm-up lap and he had to start from pit lane, but he knew that was the best option. It was drying out. And yeah, just to watch him, it was incredible. Just so precise, so fast. And it was riding easy. He really, that was another one. That was another memory that, for me, you're just incredible. Like to do that, and I think he finished the race. I think it was like 36 seconds on the board or something to the next guy. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah.
Casey's last weekend as well.
Casey's last weekend, and I think was Casey on the podium or not? I can't remember if he was. I know the Japanese test rider was. He was on the podium. But yeah, incredible.
Not Fujiwara.
Was it Fujiwara? I can't remember what his name was.
It
was Japanese guy, and he was there anyway. That was them two, definitely two memories that stick out.
That race at Brno is it's kind of pivotal for so many reasons, because for him to do what he did at Brno with at least 4 fast direction changes, around the lot. So you got the flip that goes on to
when you're cupping up
down to the bottom, then you got 2 chicanes on the way up, back to the start finish.
Not
Danny Pedrosa territory in any way, shape or form.
But he was, like I say, he wanted it. And I mean, he beat Lorenzo. I mean, Lorenzo must have wanted it, but it was just, it was a surreal moment, really. Yeah.
That's what you go racing for.
Yeah, that was it. It was a passion. I mean, I was in tears afterwards, but I remember on the wall, they did I think BBC did something the week later, says, what was you doing on the board? And they showed a video of me, and I'm like, oh my God, I look like something out of the zoo down in London or whatever, just behind a cage. But it's just a passion. That's what you go racing for.
But you see it when any rider crosses the line. They're all up there because it means so much to everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
This is the passion that we go racing for. That's the great joy of it all.
Yeah.
What was it like towards the end? Because there was what was the end last season? 17.
My last season it was good.
16.
But I think Danny was looking for something that he didn't really exist. He changed a lot of mechanics and people and stuff like that. And I said to him once, because he said I had a rumour that there was a list of people that he wanted to change. And I said to Danny, if I find out that my name was on that list, I says, me and you're going to fall out properly. And he's, no, he wasn't. I said, well, okay, that's fine. And I never found out, but I was definitely not on that list because I stayed there. But 2 of the guys he got rid of it was just for him to try and get that. He wanted the same kind of feeling as Marquez with all the team and all the people around him and stuff like that. And it was never going to happen. Changing 2 guys like that, it's never going to happen.
If you're starting to change things like that, you're clutching at straws.
Exactly.
Because you're fixed on what Mark's doing.
Yeah.
He's had Santi Hernandez and his crew with him since 125.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't all of a sudden make that relationship by bringing 2 new people in.
Bear in mind, Santi was our shower guy in 2002 with a radar.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, Santi was.
He's a suspension guy.
Yeah. Real nice guy, though. I've known him a long time.
It's a fascinating thing when a rider starts to go, when they've peaked.
Yeah. Well, Danny had peaked, you know. I mean, I think I worked, was it 30 odd races, victories with him.
31.
And 31, yeah. And it's just so, you could see he'd like have 2 or 3 wins, or then it'd be just 1 win, and he wasn't making the wins like he did before. And you could just see it slowly tailoring off. And one main reason why I decided to leave Honda was, obviously I knew that KTM was coming on board, and I realised that obviously some of the mechanics that had come to replace the two good guys that had left was not really at the level that they should have been, and they were probably getting paid more money than me. And I was thinking, hang on a minute, something's got to change here. And I remember Mike Leitner ringing me up, and he said, come to the workshop in summer. I was like, okay then. And bearing in mind, Livio Supo had said to us, don't sign anything in Assen. When we left Assen, it was a summer break. He said, don't sign anything with anybody. There'll be a contract after that. And I didn't really get on with Livio, but that's another story. I had a few run-ins with him, let's say. Once he clipped me on the back of the head, just jokingly. And I said,
can't cope with that.
No, and I said, you do that again, I'll smack you in the fucking face, mate.
Yeah.
And from that point on, never really, the blokes, he destroyed the HRC team and then left. So,
And they're still picking up the pieces.
They're still picking up the pieces now, and that's why they're in the situation. And hopefully the boys are improving, but that's why it's like it is.
It's nice to see the results improving for them.
Yeah. They've put a lot of work in there, a lot of investment and everything as well. So,
well, this goes back to what you said earlier on about the difference in development time. So now you're coming into your time at Repsol Honda is done.
Yeah.
The opportunity's presenting itself at KTM, where there is a different culture of that needs changing.
Yeah.
Let's fix it.
Yeah.
This is what we need. We need that from that supplier. That's coming in from there. Whereas the Japanese will be, okay, well, we need to test it against this. And how does it affect that?
And it just takes too long.
2 months later, the part arrives, but it's already obsolete.
Yeah, because you've already got an Evo 2 of that part, or Evo 3 even. And that's it for me. It's like, that is where the Japanese have really struggled in the last, say, 3 years. They've really struggled to keep up with the European speed and how they're pushing things forward. Because, like I said before, we would get things at KTM and it had never been on a bike, and they wanted it on the bike, even if it was probably no better, but you're trying it. And also, we were trying parts that it was like that was your test as well. Not through all the Japanese way, this must go to this and before you go to the track. It was like, jump all that and just go straight to the track.
Yeah.
And that's why they're in this situation,
I was going to say something about that. How much do you think Mark masked the issues with the Honda?
I think because of how talented he is, he covered a lot of it up. But the problem, this is another thing with Danny and Mark, they followed Mark because he would say opposite to whatever Danny said. Deliberately, because he knew he could ride a bike that did that, and that, where the other guy possibly couldn't. But then it gets to a point where nobody can ride that bike, and also you're struggling.
You're way too far the opposite way.
And then to go back, you've got to come back all this way to go that way again. I remember when Casey came, they basically took Danny's bike, one of them, and they had all white bodywork with the kangaroos on it.
Yeah.
And that was Danny's bike, Danny's gearbox from Valencia, and Casey was the fastest in the test. And he said to Danny, thanks for developing an half-decent bike. But then when Mark came, you see, he would say opposite to whatever Danny said, and they all believed Mark because he was faster. But in hindsight, the bike, it was only built for him. We're still on.
Oh, yeah.
It was only built for him. And then, like I say, he was starting to struggle and started to crash. And then that's what happened,
Because you were probably still there. When Casey came back and did that Sepang test.
Was he on the Ducati or was he on the Honda?
I can't remember what
he came back and did one for Ducati.
Was it for Ducati? I can remember.
Yeah, he did one for Ducati.
And he smoked everybody, didn't he?
Yeah, it was.
I couldn't remember if that was.
Yeah, I think
that was 17 then. That was back in your first year at KTM.
It could have been. Yeah, it could have been. I can't remember exactly.
No, I can't. I just remember doing something about
came back for Ducati and he was so fast, it was unreal.
Came back, I just went there.
Yeah, there you go. That's how you do it. Yeah.
You can have it
Come in for a day and see you later. But that was Casey.
Yeah.
That was Casey. I mean, I've got a lot of time for him. I speak to him even now when we go to Australia and stuff. And just naturally talented.
The most naturally talented rider.
Aggressive. So aggressive. I mean, sometimes I remember once he came into the garage and the brake line was off because we were like on a clip and you put a spring clip over it. And he came in and the mechanic just put it back on and didn't say anything. And then
obviously Casey must have looked at the data and looked at the TV screen afterwards. And then he saw, obviously, he was riding with his brake line off. And he came in and he went absolutely fucking mental because I think Andy Dawson, Olin's guy, was checking because he never had a lot of stroke on the front forks because only one caliper's working. And I was thinking, what's wrong? There's something wrong. But the mechanic just put it on and never said anything. And it was like, Casey went absolutely mental because that was the reason why he was getting no stroke, because the only one caliper was working. But yeah, I think it was 10 bar on the front master cylinder and he wouldn't stop it. So yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch. So tell me the story of the move to KTM then. What was that like?
That was me and Pup on a Sunday night in Valencia. I said bye to Danny and everybody, which, yeah, I mean, I've been there a long while. Really good guys, mechanic-wise, they were great guys. But just decided, I thought, I know what, I want something different, I want a different challenge and stuff. And yeah, so me and Pup, we packed our bags because obviously we drove the truck together and stuff like that. And we walked up to KTM and it was just like, what the fucking hell have we done here? I think there was the exact words we said to each other, like looked at each other like, why, I think because they didn't know where there was really, they did the wild card and they didn't finish the race. And I said to them, why didn't you finish the race? And they said, the rear speed sensor broke, so it failed. I'm like, okay. They said, your first job, if possible, can you fix that? So I'm like, hang on a minute. I've only just come from down there.
I didn't even got my shirt.
Yeah. And I said, yeah, okay, no worries, we'll try it. I said, what can I do? He said, you can do anything. You can cut, you can do whatever you want. And I said, well, for me, they'd basically solid mounted the speed sensors to the swing arm. I said, we need to stop them from being solid and on like some foam or some rubber or something. Anyway, we made this bit of rubber up that would sit there and tie wrapped on and stuff like that. And we did the full test the next day and the day after that, and we never broke down once. And the guy come up to me and he said, I wish you was here yesterday. And I went, why is that? He said, because we'd have finished the race. And I was like, well, maybe, but I said, that's why I'm probably here now. Yeah. So yeah, we did all the testing. And then obviously from then we had a big input, me, Pup, obviously Christoph, really good mechanics and a lot of experience. And it really helped KTM how things should be. Because obviously we'd come from factories that had won races and won championships.
Everything was where it should be.
And that's why Mike Leitner wanted everybody.
Yeah.
Because it was a great group of knowledge and people and everything.
You're bringing the ethos with you.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, the actual bikes and all that lot wasn't really there.
Yeah.
The structure, but that part was ready, so it was just kind of right, off we go.
You don't need to grow with the structure.
Yeah.
The structure needs to grow around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I went, like I say, going back, I went to Mundafing in summer. I flew to Munich and drove down and had a bit of a meeting with Sebastian Rees, who was the technical director there, and Mike, obviously. And I remember Sebastian, he said, so what qualifications do you have? And bearing in mind, it's probably the same story, like Mike Leitner was behind him, absolutely wetting himself. And I said, well, I started racing in 2001 in Grand Prix. And he went, oh, so you have a little bit of experience. And I said, a little bit, yeah. And Mike's wetted himself because he's asking these questions. So you're not actually qualified mechanic? I said, no, I'm actually an electrician by trade. But anyway, and he just said, what have you done? And we went through things like that. And like I say, I kept looking and Mike's like red-faced, laughing like behind him and stuff. And they offered me a contract there. And then I said, I'll sign one in Austria.
Yeah.
I don't need to sign one now. I said, I know what I'm doing. And I remember ringing up my partner at the time. I said, I know exactly what I'm doing next year. I'm leaving Honda and I'm going to KTM. And that was it. So I came back from there, did the rest of the season. Obviously, I told Honda that I was leaving, which Danny didn't really like, but he understood. And yeah, that was it. And like I say, on Sunday night in Valencia, we did the race with Honda and then went up to the KTM garage. So yeah, it was a bit of a...
How strange is that?
It's weird.
To literally be in one set of clothes one day and another set of clothes another.
Because then you can't go into the garage.
No, that's it. All ties are cut.
You can't go into the garage. You can't. And it's like, it's a bit strange. It's a strange feeling because you're going into unmanned territory. Like, you don't know what to expect. You don't know any of the guys there, So yeah, it was,
because obviously Bradley Smith was there and the riders was up
Right,
there.
and John Zarco.
No, Bradley Smith was there and Espargaro.
Oh, it was Paul
was there. Yeah,
right.
they were both there at the same time. It was like, they're the riders and they hadn't been there either, because they hadn't rode the bike. Mika did the wild card.
Oh, he did, didn't he?
Mika Calio did the wild card, yeah. So it was like one bike each. It was like, right, we've got a bit of work on here.
One thing that you just reminded me of there, when you talk about the rear wheel speed sensor and what have you, you'd have been working with Danny when Mark linked on him at Oregon.
Yeah, and it cut through, basically, I think it was his clutch lever or something, and it broke the rear speed sensor and gave him full power. Yeah.
Right at the time he didn't need it.
Right at the time he didn't need it. It just chucked him straight over the top. Yeah.
So then after that, did they move it underneath the swing arm?
No, it was in the same place, but it had a car. Well, there's a funny story to this, actually.
This hasn't even been rehearsed. This is just me thinking of things.
Now, I remember this happening, and HRC, I mean, the bikes are beautiful.
Yeah.
You throw them together and they'll go together by themselves pretty much. And they brought this fucking bracket that was either bonded onto the swing arm or screwed onto the swing arm out of pressed aluminium. And I'm like, I said to him, are you joking me? I said, this will be the most photographic part this weekend, and you've brought that.
Yeah.
So in the end, we got some carbon fibre tape, let's say, and covered it over and made it look half decent and then put it on. But I thought,
that's not right, that.
Fucking hell, you know what I mean? Beautiful motorcycle.
Carbon fibre.
Yeah, and it was just like a piece of pressed aluminium like that, just to cover the cables up. So we basically just got some carbon paper and just put it over it and just...
It's a fix.
Yeah, but it's going to...
Aesthetically
it's
not
going to be
pretty.
that's where everybody's going to be looking. But anyway, they came back with that and that was, But that was the fix at what happened, yeah.
Over the years, in your time in GPs, and when things have come in and you've had to fit things, what's the biggest thing you've rolled your eyes at?
Looked at things. I'm just trying to think now. You've put me on the spot there.
I have a little bit. I've been kind to you so far.
Probably that hammerhead that they're using at KTM now on the front fender.
Okay.
When that came, it's like, what is this? Why? What is this? That was a big thing. I was thinking, this is just not going to work, but it must work because they're using it. But just to look at it, it just looks awful. But a lot of the wings look awful, if I'm honest. But if they're doing the job, that's how it is nowadays.
It's not made for the best racing now, is it?
No, but
you've seen
also the looks of the bikes.
No, I agree. They don't look like...
They don't look... If you take all the wings off them...
I bet they look beautiful.
They look nice, but all the wings, it just doesn't seem to suit them.
Because you've gone from the slippery bikes to the downforce.
Right, everything's smooth. I mean, you look at everything. Yeah. It's just... But now it's more about downforce and pitch from front to rear and things like that. And yeah, that hammerhead was definitely a... Whoa, what's that? There's probably a few more others, but I just can't remember off the top of my head.
Sorry to put you on the spotlight.
It's all right.
Expecting that one, were you?
No, I wasn't. You put me. Yeah, it was like a low blow, that one.
I think of stuff as we go through. It just proves I'm listening to you. So I'm not just reading from this. So tell me about the development through KTM then, because it's been, what were we there, 7 years?
From 17 to
end of
end
of 24.
8 years, 7, 8 years.
Yeah. How did the team develop? What was the development like through there and the riders?
Very, very fast. Very fast, very quick. They were bringing things straight through, which was good, really. It just, I couldn't really understand how quick they were going with development because they would just bring one part, but then they'd, like you say, there'd been Evo 2 and Evo 3 of that part because it had been rushed made first time. The second was a bit better and the third was better than that. And that's how it went, but it got you through. Do you know what I mean? You'd find... I remember the first meeting, it was the same for Pup. We went to Imunda thing. I think it was December. And they said, right, can you tell us about our bike? And it was just like, you didn't want to slag it off, but it was a fucking turd, a lot of it, to change things or... It had been built okay, but not really thought of for racing. And... that was the kind of mentality of it. Yeah. And you didn't want to slag them off, but you had to put them, say, this is how it's going to work, really. And how you've done it is a bit like exhaust springs. I forget how many I counted, but silly amount of exhaust springs. You needed probably half of them. Yeah. But it was like over-engineered. you know, some things like that. And like I say, but the speed of development was really quick, like chassis wise, because they could build all their own chassis.
Yeah.
You know, that was with a steel frame. Swing arms, I remember we had 4 swing arms come that had been built by KTM. I mean, Pup had pressed all the bearings in the swing arms and built them all. And Bradley Smith went out. It was in Brno. And obviously the mechanics knew how to adjust a chain. And he came in and the chain was all slack. And Pup said, "Did you adjust the chain?" I said, "Yeah, we did definitely." And anyway, he said, "Oh, we adjusted the chain again." And Bradley, you know, did an outlap and in. So he didn't really hammer it or anything. And then he came back in again and the chain was slack. I said, "Right, test cancelled." And we used to call them the Ferrero Rocher swing arms because they just went, that was it. They just bent. So, yeah, but that's speed.
Yeah.
Because you've got that speed, it just comes through and you've got to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you had one test rider, you ain't got enough time for him to test all of them. You know, it was just the speed of how stuff came through so fast.
Not always a good thing.
Not always a good thing, but you get a direction from things.
Yeah.
You know, they get the numbers that one good, right? We need to improve there or there or there. And it worked in the end, you know.
How much of a difference did Danny make coming in as test rider?
I think Danny was good, but Paul also, as a test rider, was good, you know. And a lot of things, even the crew chiefs as well wanted to do with the rider position and that. They was good as well. I mean, Marcus Eckenbacher, he works in BMW now. What he was trying to do is where they was a year ago, moving the engine or whatever.
Yeah.
But regarding Danny, it helped having a fast rider like him. And it was good because I was working with him again. You know, we had a few tests in Malaysia and it was great to work with him again after, a few years with KTM. So, yeah, it was good.
And then he comes back to Misano and chops for the podium.
Yeah, that was kind of a...
What was that?
It was like, they're taking points off us. I said, yeah, but what can you do?
Do you know what I saw it as? Taking a piss.
Yeah. I mean,
because
fair play to him.
He's an alien.
Yeah.
And he's still an alien. And you can do that.
It was benefit for him.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
It's
Erez, when he was on the podium in Erez, wasn't he? Yeah.
The Casey Stoner moment, it's like, I'm still here, boys.
Yeah.
I can still do it.
And he enjoys it.
But that's the difference now.
Yeah. He goes now and he does a few tests and enjoys it. Before he was racing.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's like less pressure and he's a different person.
He's got the fun back in life.
Because like I said to you before, Danny's a very shy person. Doesn't like, if he could go to a race circuit, do the race and come home, he'd be more than happy. But it's not about that.
He always put his helmet on facing away from the camera.
He did strange things. He'd look up and take it back off.
He'd rub it.
Yeah.
And then he'd put it on.
But then sometimes he'd take it, and then he zips, he'd go up, down, back up again. It wouldn't just go like that. He'd go up like that and then put the thing on. But all riders have their own different routines, how they do stuff.
They're all a bit strange.
Yeah, because they're fast on a motorbike.
I find that you have to be in a certain position mentally to be able to do what they do.
Absolutely.
Because they're not regular people. No. We just go, fuck, I'm not doing that.
I mean, I forget it was about blinking when they're racing and riding.
Okay.
When do you think they blink when they're racing? I don't think some of them won't even blink for a lap. When do they blink? But you don't think about that, but you think, they must do it somewhere. And they must, but they're that much concentration. I remember Brad come in sometimes and his eyes are just red because it's just concentration all the time. And you think, wow.
I'm really aware that I'm blinking now.
No, you're like, But they've got to blink at some point. Or when?
You imagine somewhere like Mugello.
Down the straight, they probably have a little minute. Well, not a minute, but like a second just down the straight. And then,
but for the rest of the lap, because you're on the go all the time.
It's demanding. It's demanding. But a lot of tracks are demanding.
The bikes make it that way, don't they? There's no easy tracks out there.
No, but like you say, riders they're a different breed, especially the really good ones. They're just like, they're supernatural, a lot of them.
Where does Brad fit into that?
Brad's supernatural.
Because he for me, I heard about Brad. I said this on the chat with Pup. I heard about him sort of 2012-ish when I was working with Jordan Weaving.
Yeah.
Because they grew up together racing with Brad and Darren and his dad Trevor. And
lovely family.
Yeah.
Lovely people.
From working in the mining industry and the great background and the support that they had. But then they get into GP and they've done it the hard way.
Oh, they've grafted.
Yeah.
They've grafted.
And I find that fascinating. I think that's what makes him as grateful as he is to do what he does, because Darren hasn't quite got the talent that Brad has.
No.
It almost looked like it at some point, but he's found his level, I think, in Darren's terms.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
But for Brad, he's literally got there through blood, guts and thunder.
Determination, yeah. I mean, he's such a determined rider, aggressive, super fast. Sometimes he doesn't know why he's fast.
That's always difficult when a rider doesn't know why they do what they do.
Other times he will know why he's fast.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Sometimes he'll struggle at some sessions.
But that's the consistency that makes race winners and champions.
Yeah. I mean,
understanding how and why you do what you do.
Exactly. I mean, and also he's had some injuries.
Yeah.
His arm and stuff like that. He's had some injuries. But he seemed to, if he does crash, he generally bounces and gets back up.
He's not Danny. He's not made a twig. Bless him.
No. Danny used to crash and he used to smash himself to pieces.
That was such a hold back on his career.
I remember once Danny broke his collarbone, and they had Alberto said, "We'll have a small plate put in and small screws, because then it'll not move. It'll not affect his movement." And the screws had worked themselves loose, so we had to have another operation. And then they put a bigger plate, bigger screws, but then it stopped the blood flow, and he was getting pins and needles in his hand. So it was just like everything he did, and what he had repaired. It was like there'd be another factor to it, you know. He came to Sepang once, and he had this big cut on his knee, and I said, "What happened?" And he crashed his bike or something on a curb, and I'm like, I thought, "What are you doing here?" You know, it's going to get infected.
But they won't.
And it's what they do. And it was like he was 16th fastest in the test. And I'm like, what is going on here? And we later found out that I think he'd either bust his hip or cracked his hip and like a big cut in his knee, but they kept it quiet. And then in the end, it was like limping. I said, "What's up?" And he's like, he told me, I'm like, "Shouldn't even be here."
The fascinating side of motorcycle racing is injuries.
Yeah.
And how they keep them quiet.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff that we don't know as fans watching on the TV.
You don't see it.
You don't see 80% of what goes on and what they have to do.
I remember once with Danny, he'd broken his toe and his ankle and he couldn't shift. So me and Mike said, let's glue some carbon on his boot. And so I said, all right, we tried to find a bit of fairing that was quite strong, and we glued it on his toe with some araldite or whatever, and we put some slots in it, and he used it for the race. But I think he'd broken his foot or something, and when he was shifting, he was lifting his whole foot up.
Actually pulling it up, yeah. Which is extra pressure. Where
he didn't even know about it.
See, that's different level. Tell me about Brad's win.
The first one. It was really, the problem with that was there was no fans there.
Yes.
Because it was COVID.
Yeah.
We didn't expect it at all. And it was, it just came from nowhere. But he just rode fantastic. Absolutely committed. You know, every lap came through. I think on the board it was plus 9 seconds at the end. And he didn't know that. He was like still pushing. Because I remember coming to the last corner thinking, whoa, on the TV. But when we walked back, I think Florian came to do the pit board with me for some reason. Because in Brun, you can't be the first pit board. Okay. Because you're close to the exit the last corner.
Yeah.
You have to go further up. So we went further up at Moto 2 or whatever. And Florian came with me. And we was doing the board. And obviously when we walked back, everybody was like, compliments, fantastic. And it was like, it didn't sink in then until we got back to the garage. And it was like, what have we just done? Because it was KTM, it was a steel frame, and you just won a MotoGP race. You know, it was unbelievable. And for everybody there, it was a massive achievement.
Knowing what you knew at the time, did you ever think it'd happen?
Earlier on, no.
Yeah.
No, I doubted myself a few times. But when Brad came on board, you had the rider to do it.
Zarco was good, but the problem is he didn't want to work at it. He wanted a bike to win. And at the time at KTM, you had to put the work in to get the bike out. And he didn't want that. He wanted to go on a Ducati, which he did later, and he won races, and fair play to him. But Brad, it was kind of, you had the right rider for the job. You just need to give him the right package.
I find it on a national level very similar to what Tommy Bridewell did last year.
Exactly.
You've got the right rider.
You've got the right rider.
With the right mindset.
And he'll
do.
Do. Yeah, exactly.
He will do the rest.
He'll do it. That's what it was. And when we came back to the garage, everybody was just really emotional, you know, and which was great. It's what we're there for. And also a new manufacturer to win. Yeah. It was great. Fantastic times.
Part of the fabric of the sport.
Part of it. Exactly.
And also the fastest MotoGP bike.
Yeah. Yeah, I built that
366.
one. Yeah. Built that one. It was in Mugello, that one. Yeah.
What's that?
228 mile an hour, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, it was my bike that we built, yeah. But let's say it was all the boys together, though. The rider, everybody, the whole people around it.
Those planets aligning again.
Yeah, yeah. And I think he got a bit of a slipstream and got a good exit, and that was it. So, yeah. I think it still stands now, because I think Paul's got the same. Paul matched it.
Did he match it?
I think Paul matched it, yeah. Yeah.
See what Marta does this year.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting.
So when the time came that you, at the end of last year, what prompted?
I think it was just
change.
I'd had enough of the travelling.
Yeah.
I've got a lad that's 8-9 year old, and I'm getting on now. I'm not a young whippersnapper anymore. And when I first started, it was my dream of doing it, and I've done that. I've accomplished it. I didn't win a championship, but I've met a lot of really good people, worked with some amazing people, riders and that. And it was just time to come back home a little bit more and just spend more time at home rather than being on an airplane. And like I said before, I think with MotoGP, you have to be very, very, how could you say it? You've got to be not very kind to other people, like family members, but you've got to selfish, and you've got to, if you want to do that, you have to be really selfish on people. And I'd done that for so long, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. My lad needs me now more than any time of the year. He needs me. So yeah, I just decided. I mean, I could have probably stayed there for another. If I'd stayed for another 10 years.
Yeah.
But then my lad would have been 18, 19, and I wouldn't have seen him. So
the years you're not getting back.
That was for me. I'd done 24 years in Grand Prix, and right, okay, let's see what the options are and what we're going to do. And I'll be honest, I left and I didn't have anything in the pipeline. I had to leave and just, okay, that's done with. And yeah, I got a phone call in, I think it was in December or January, from Harvard Honda in Louth. And I went to see him, and yeah, we're doing a bit of development work for the World Superbike team.
And there's not much we can say about that.
No, it's all new at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm basically a lead mechanic, crew chief, head mechanic, and for the development team, which it's a bit more responsibility, not so much, still hands-on, but also organising a little bit as well. But it's a different challenge for me as well. And also, back working with the Japanese. And in one way it's good, but another way it's like going back before KTM, because it's that same barrier again. But I think that will relatively change in the future anyway.
Yes, it's like you say, it's an early days. Tetsuya Nakashima as the test rider.
Yeah, yeah.
You've been out to World Superbikes.
Yeah, did Australia, did the first round there. We knew we weren't going to win the race, but fantastic just to go back to Australia and see everybody. And yeah, and the weather's beautiful when Superbikes go. MotoGP, it's generally freezing cold, and all the Italians have about 7 layers on. But no, it was good to go back there in, was it in February? I think February. And yeah, see all the people, catch up with people there. So it was good.
I think it feels like it's giving you the bug again.
Yeah,
it's a different challenge.
Yeah.
Back with HRC, but it's a completely different. This isn't race wins. No, this isn't.
It's development laps. Yeah,
this is development time.
Yeah, and it's more. How could you say it? Because like the one of the main guys was my technical engineer from HRC, Takeo Yokoyama.
Of course,
he's basically well up, and when he knew I was going onto the project, he was so pleased basically, because it's like just to be back working with him.
you know. And I spoke to him in Japan last year, and I knew something was happening. But just great to be involved with it, to be fair.
Was he the man responsible for bringing Mark into MotoGP?
I don't know. Could have been.
He was MotoGP project.
He was
2013,
exactly. He was the technical director, and then they got rid of him. And I can't remember who came in, but that for me was a mistake straight away. You know, he's a great engineer, and I think he spent a lot of his time in America as well. So for me, they got rid of the wrong person, but obviously they must have done, because look now. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a few little questions to end.
Oh, you've
with
made the list, haven't you?
Of course I have. I need to go and get my phone in a second as well, because we've got questions from our fabulous patrons as well.
No worries.
What was your favourite bike to work on of all the bikes you've worked on over your career?
NSR 500 V4.
Most embarrassing moment? Easy question, difficult question.
I think it was probably wheeling a Honda Melody when I was working for Rob Frio, and he had no rear brake. And I wheelied it at Snetterton and flipped off the back. And then you stand up and look around if anybody watching me. And James Toesden was watching me and was laughing his head off.
It's like tripping up.
So
First thing you do is look round to see if anybody's seen you.
Or because we used to bounce the R7 Superbikes off.
Okay.
And at Brands Hatch, I bounced one off, but then it went the opposite way, and then it landed I was on top of it. Yeah, so I had to change the handlebar and the footrests and just scuff the exhaust. So that's probably another embarrassing moment. Yeah.
Which track was your least favourite to travel to?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I'm going to tell you, Argentina.
I thought it might be
far away from anywhere. And we've had a few close calls, let's say, going there with the Japanese. And I remember Marquez was on. He was on the same flight as us, and his helmet guy. And we was flying to, I think it was to Rio Honda, exactly from Buenos Aires, on a flight that Honda had put on. And he was actually sat in the cockpit because he was going to watch the landing. And we gets coming into Rio Honda, and there was an electric shower, thunderstorm, and they were just flashing blue all through the aircraft. And to a point, he came out the cockpit and come and sat next to Mark and was white as a sheet. And they left the door open, and it kept saying, "Pull up, terrain." And I'm like, what's going to happen here? Anyway, later on, we found out we was coming into land, and we'd have missed the runway completely. And then we pulled back up because the guy on the ground was going, no. And he came, anyway, we went back up, but we had to go back up through the bloody cloud again.
Round, yeah. Missed approach.
And exactly. And we came back in for the second time. And when you land in aircraft, you get that flare, don't you?
Yeah.
And the flare lasts for what? 2 seconds? The flare was about 7 or 8 seconds. And it went bang on the runway. And I'm like, fucking hell, that's down. And then we did the bounce and the bounce and the bounce and that lot.
Did you do the random floors?
Well, I think everybody was that white-faced. Also, Japanese are all already like that. But there was some of the Japanese was kissing the tarmac when we'd got off. And like I say, Mark's helmet guy, he was as white as a sheet. But that, for me, it's just to get there. I mean, we flew, I think it was 19 hours via Sao Paulo to get to Buenos Aires. And then you've still got an internal flight. To Rio Honda,
the top corner, isn't it?
So it's just
border.
That way for me is just if they could cancel that would be it. But, yeah.
Superbikes don't go there, do they?
No, thank God for that. I think we only do Australia, and then it's the rest of it's in Europe, so that's perfect.
You don't mind that, do you?
No,
disappear on a Tuesday,
another reason.
Come back on a Monday.
It's even the testing. We'll be testing the week, so it'll be like go on a Monday, come back on a Friday, or even a Saturday, which I don't mind that.
See you Monday, boys. Thanks very much.
Exactly.
Perfect. That life balance now.
Yeah.
The stories that you've got, the experiences that you've had for, like you say, 24, 25 years in the paddock.
Yeah.
To make the decision yourself to walk away rather than it being no doors open.
Yeah. It's not about money.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, it's not about money.
You can be so much more at peace with yourself. You're like, I really enjoyed that. Thanks, lads.
Yeah. Exactly.
You don't watch on the telly going, oh, I wish I was still there.
No.
Why didn't I get that?
No, I mean, the only thing I get is I miss them lads because great set of people.
But that's 25 years.
But also,
of all the KTM boys, we used to get the music on.
Yeah.
And we did everything as like a team, as like friends more than anything. You go for food, or like I say, we all went to Brad's wedding, who could. And it was just more of a, rather than being at work, it was like they're part of your family when you're at work, because you're away for such a long period through the year. There was your part-time or second family. So yeah, I do miss them lads, a lot of them.
Even beyond.
Even beyond. He's a pain in the ass sometimes.
Be honest, man. What a guy. I remember him when he raced Super Sport and Stock 6. He was in the early days when we did Paddock Chatter years ago.
Yeah.
He carried a couple of stickers on the bike, and he was always positive about back 2013, 2014.
I've had him here, by the way.
What a
I've
character.
I did his bike for him. I did all the brakes and did oil filter and that for him. So he's been here and I've done that for him.
There's good ladies on the other side of the bridge.
Beverly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just what a character. You look at him telling now, like, how have you? You've done that. You know, a reasonable racer in his time with for Phil Seaton.
Exactly. He did all right. Enjoyed it.
There's that picture of him when he's sideways and he can't tell whether he saved it or whether he crashed it. It's like, which way go? It was beyond. We know which way it went. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been absolutely fascinating.
It's been good to give.
I'm glad you've enjoyed it.
I have. Yeah, it's just good to. I have got a few stories and
a picture we put on as well.
Oh my life!
Amazing.
I've got hair on there.
It's amazing what you do when you Google it. Because this was 6th of January. Because of everything that went on with OMG yesterday, loads and loads of messages. And I meant to put it out again to the patrons, so I do apologise to the patrons who didn't get a chance to do this. Now, there's two of our patrons, Simon Breeze and Craig Lowe, have put some great questions together.
Yeah.
The first one, what are the biggest differences between rider with regard to their preferred chassis setup? These are technical questions. Yeah, I could never think of asking.
The bike, for me, the chassis is very similar, but your handlebar position, your footrest and even the tank shelter is basically for that rider. And it won't probably suit another rider. Do you know what I mean?
You'll have tailor-made bits.
They're the tailor-made bits, and it is built for them. Like footrest, Brad's footrest will be different to Danny's because Danny's a shorter leg.
And also sometimes different widths as well.
Different widths. Also handlebars, where they're like them up, down, forward, back.
Yeah.
You know, every rider's different. And once you get them comfy, that's when they're made from billet one piece, obviously. But yeah, the chassis-wise, generally the chassis are all the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible to compare Hizzy on the R1 or the R7 as it was and Danny on the RCV?
Nah, totally different. But both great riders.
The last question is 2003, and you weren't part of that one, then. You only did the 2000 season with him, didn't you?
With
Hizzy. The question was was a question, something that Rob Mack said to Hizzy when he withdrew from the races in 03, but you weren't there.
No, I wasn't there in 03, no.
This is a great question from Craig. Thank you for those, Simon. How have you seen the different cultures of organisations affect development, progress and ways of working?
Yeah, a lot. Obviously, like you say, with the European compared to Japanese, hopefully things will start to change for the Japanese because I think that's the only way they've got to go.
It has to, doesn't it?
It has to. And also now with them having an Italian director or technical director, that's already a shift in that direction. It has to do because if not, they will get caught again.
Yeah.
The way things are evolving now in Europe, I mean, you look at Ducatis now. Also the KTMs and also the Aprilias. It's evolving so fast that the Japanese, even like I say, the Yamaha and Honda, they need to catch up, but they've also almost got to do it twice as fast to get level.
Because they're all still pushing forward at the same pace.
Exactly, they're still going forward, so they've got to go twice as much to even get level with them.
It's a fascinating dynamic for the whole side of MotoGP.
Yeah.
And the final question from Craig, which event or occasion that you've been part of would you have loved to see and experience through your rider's eyes? I love that question.
That is a good question, that one, isn't it? Probably Brad, when he won in the wet stroke dry in Austria, because nobody expected him to stay out.
Was he the only one that did?
He was the only one that did of the 5 that stayed out.
Yeah.
and he was on slicks and it was raining. They all came in, he carried on, and we just could not believe it. It was just like, he stayed out. And it's like, okay. So then you have to put a pit board on to give him the information who's on slicks still, because everybody else is coming in for wets.
Yeah.
And the next lap, guys was already coming through on wets that was taking time off him. Do you know what I mean? So
a lot of information to process, but for you as well
for us to understand where we was with it.
Was it 1:27 something round there?
Yeah. You ain't got a lot of time.
No.
So it was for me, and also imagine him what he's thinking, because he had to ride the bike so gently. He said he had no brakes because the brakes was cold, and and when he came in, the bike was wet through.
Yeah.
How he'd even done the slowdown lap, I've no idea.
I can't imagine how much physicality that takes, because you're riding so tense.
Exactly. And not concentration.
Yeah,
and
like
everything.
Jake on Sunday.
Exactly.
Same principle.
Yeah. And like Brad even said, he was braking and back shifting, and it was just locking because there was no temperature in the tyres. It was just like everything just worked against him, but he still managed to get round the last, even the last corner, I think he was on the green and stuff, and it's just like, wow. And then when he came in, he couldn't believe it, and neither could we, but it just, everybody else who came in was on wets, so it's just like,
they all pull into part fair, mate.
Yeah, it's like you're looking down, I think there's a picture somewhere, we used to have at KTM with the door, we call it a door of fame on all the panels, all the pit panels, and there was a picture of Brad, and he was like skidded on slicks and everybody behind him in wets, if you know what I mean. But yeah, we had a big door, and it used to have all pictures of all of us and stuff like that. It was really good, yeah. But for me, that would be probably the race, because how it panned out and how it was just like, wow.
Well, it was completely unexpected.
Yeah.
And that, again, is determination and drive to make it work.
And he had the chance and the balls just to go, do you know what? I'm going to gamble today.
What would he have lost if he hadn't?
If he hadn't, he might have crashed. He might not.
But he wasn't expected to win.
No, he just
lost
it was my
gamble.
Points. Yeah, exactly. It was my gamble, and he went for it, and luckily it paid off. If it had been another lap, it wouldn't have paid off.
No, it wouldn't. The timing was perfect.
It was the right moment. Yeah,
it's absolutely it's just class. I love talking about the. I'll never experience. I'll never work in a MotoGP paddock. So the stories. And I get it. I've been in the paddock a few times, a few people who work in there, and you get the idea of how it all works in there. But until you experience it, it's like anything. It's beyond anything that anybody else ever does.
I loved it. I loved my time there. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I met some great people, great riders. But it's just, for me now with the calendar and things like that, it's just they need to bring it back a little bit for me. And think about, it's not all about money and the riders and stuff. It's more about also you've got your infrastructure and the people. Because if they start to go, it's like, where's the championship going to go?
How's the workload changed over the years?
Oh, massively. And since the aero and the ride heights and things like that, the technology has evolved so much now in the last, I would say, 5 years, compared to how it used to be.
For years, it just tickled along, and all of a sudden it's just gone.
It's just completely great. It's just like spiking up. Yeah. For me, even the working hours and things like that. Before, you would finish work at 7 o'clock normally. Now it's 9, 10, 11 o'clock
for the same money.
For the same, but then if you have a crash, it's not. Well, you finish at 10 or maybe 11. Now it's 2 o'clock in the morning, 1:30, 2 o'clock. I remember going to Japan and we'd change from the steel frame to the carbon frame. And I think Urquid worked it out that we'd actually slept less hours than we'd worked in one day. Something like that. And it was just like, I remember coming back and I had double vision because I was just absolutely shattered. And I was that worried. I rung my partner at the time, Laura, and I said, I'm just seeing like double. And it was just fatigue. I was just absolutely knackered. And I've spoke to not recently, but I've spoke to him about it. And he said after some races, he would come home and he'd have like a headache for like 3 days because your body's just slowing down and coming back to normal. But because you've been at that level for so long through the last 3 or 4 days, you're just knackered. You want to get open, just like.
I get that impression a lot from the guys and girls who do the TT.
Yeah.
Because you are 14 days.
Non-stop.
Not a break.
Yeah.
There's always something to do, and the pressure that comes with it. It's the only thing I can kind of liken it to.
Yeah.
But you're doing that 21 times a year.
Yeah. And like I say, if you're traveling back from Argentina, or you need to be able to fly back home in business and get relaxed, because if not, you've only possibly got another week before you're off again. You know, you're just getting recovered over your jet lag and then you're off again.
Well, how did they work was it the start of last year? They've done it a bit this year, but I think it was the start of last year that they went east and then west and then back east.
Yeah. Your body was just, you didn't know what day it was.
I can't, the calendar doesn't cater for the...
But it never does. It never does. It caters for their bank balance.
It's right, yeah.
But it don't cater for the manufacturers and the people. It never does.
And they're the ones that keep it all going.
Yeah.
If they all start falling off and everybody says, do you know what, I've had enough of this, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember once we went from Australia to Brazil.
Which is
or the other way around. I think it was Australia, then Brazil was the last round.
Yeah.
And I think there was like 70% more crashes just because people was knackered.
Even the riders that fly on the charter,
the
top
they're
end.
the first out and the last in, let's say.
But it's still difficult for them.
It's difficult for them because they've still got the jet lag and they're still having to perform at the right time through the day.
They might be home 12 hours earlier than you, but they've still got to get over it and then fly off again and do the same thing. They arrive similar.
And they're the same, but they'll have families and they'll have stuff like that, you see. So
you can see why Lace decided it's enough's enough.
Yeah.
You've
got plenty of money, you don't need to work, you do this, you've got restaurants.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
I've done my time, thanks very much.
Yeah. Paul's the same. He's made some business ideas that he's done and stuff. So yeah, fair play to him, really.
It's got to be a life after.
There is. That's what my friend said to me. They says there is life after KTM and MotoGP.
100% there is.
So,
and you're enjoying it now.
I'm enjoying it now. But,
and this project could be 3-5 years.
Maybe more. You never know.
Exactly.
You never know. And that's one good thing that I'm doing it, because motorbike racing is all I've done. It's probably all I ever will do. So it's a step back, but also it's a step forward for me and myself. Yeah.
I think so. From a personal level, it's
definitely a personal level. It's much more of a step forward.
For timing now and waking up and smelling the coffee.
Yeah, yeah.
And the family time with Albie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's right.
It's the right moment for me. Some of me didn't want to do it, but most part of me said, you've made the right choice.
Go with the majority decision.
Exactly. I will miss it. I mean, I'll probably go to Silverstone and see everybody and catch up with them.
You can still do that.
And I can still do that. I'll take my lad with me and stuff, but...
You could go to Barcelona. You can go to Reds.
Exactly.
You can do what
I can have I can have a weekend.
Yeah.
You know, and just enjoy it and sit back on the other side, having a beer, saying, come on, boys.
You don't want to do it?
You don't want to do it? Well, they probably know better than me anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah.
Mate, this has been absolutely
I've really enjoyed it. It's been brilliant.
You know what you listen to the show, you know what the final question is. And there might be one or two, but Jonny Eyre, what's your best hire car story, mate?
I've got two, right? And one of them is with Steve Hislop, and was testing, I think, in Cartagena, and we had a day off and was going for a ride to the coast. And I'm a shit passenger. And I was in the passenger side, he was driving, and he turned his head that way, but carried on looking forward. And then he started veering off the curb, and I was, Steve, like that. And then he just turned around, got you, fucker, like that. And that was one of them. And I was just red-faced, like, fucking hell. And then the other one was Rob McElney. I think it was the hire car to and from the circuit in Cartagena. But Rob's a fairly decent driver. And fucking handbrake turns, and it was like a rally stage before you got to like circuit entrance. And of course we didn't have our seatbelts on in the back or anything like that, and he was handbrake turning, we're up against the window like this, and I'm thinking, fucking hell. So we got to circuit and the handbrake cable had snapped, so we had to get underneath it and put a tyre up on it and fix it. But they're the two that stick out for me. Yeah.
At such early time in your career as well.
Yeah.
Is this how it's going to be? Because when you get to MotoGP and you factory mechanics and things, you can't really do anything. You can't.
There was one, I think it was last year or the year before, in Rio Honda in Argentina, where Jez, bless him, Jez Wilson, we'd finished packing up and was all in the car, and near the hotel where we was getting a shower before we flew, and he managed to get his car stuck, like full beached. It was like a bog, and it was like, what we're going to do here? And I think Putt went back to circuit, and we got a ratchet strap from the freight people. I thought, how are we going to do this? So we're shoes and socks off, all of us. You know, I think I've got a picture somewhere. We're absolutely caked in this like a red, clayey, shitty bog smell. And we get a ratchet strap. What we're going to ratchet strap to? There's no towing ups or anything. So we lifted the boots up, and you know, the little hook for the boot, put it on that and on the other one, and we managed to pull him out and tow him out and tow him out. He's just like, fucking hell. But then obviously, when we had a shower, we took the cars back, and the cars was absolutely orange and just mucky shit. And I'm thinking, please, it's not mine.
It's not my name on that one.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah.
This has been absolutely fascinating, Jonny. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Us over, mate. So chuffed with this.
Fantastic. I've really enjoyed it.
I wish you all the very best with Honda.
Yep. Thank you very much.
There's a lot to do there with Tetsu and the team.
Future. Yeah.
Maybe we'll see you knocking about at BSB as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to work there though.
No, I mean, they've already asked
me that, and I'm like, no, I'm all right.
No.
Go do a TT. No, I'm all right, thank you.
Got enough on.
No, I'll keep to doing what I'm doing.
Let us know in the comments below what you think. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, it's Jonny Eyre.
Thank you very much. Thanks, mate. I appreciate that.
Thanks, mate.
Brilliant.
Well, a massive thank you to Jonny Eyre. What a fantastic fella and some great stories. And we wish him all the very best for 2025 with the HRC World Superbike Test Team. Next week, we're hopeful it should be the 10 of 810 Racing. We've had it confirmed. We just need to make sure that everything is in place before we really do push it on the social media. But keep our fingers crossed that next week we'll be bringing you the great Peter Hickman. Keep those fingers tightly crossed, won't you? So until then, thank you so very much for listening and for watching. And please do look after yourself. Bye-bye.